Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Sob. Shit. The White Dragon headquarters on the 76th floor was a giant castle that had once been home to Red Dragon, which had ruled over the tower for hundreds of years. However, the castle had lost its former splendor, and it now looked like forlorn ruins. White Dragon had tried to restore it to its former glory as they took care of their internal conflict, but it wasn't easy. Most of the 81 Oculus, the pillars of Red Dragon, had either died or gone into hiding, and most of the troops had deserted. Still, Waltz tried to gather the remaining forces and lift White Dragon as the new version of Red Dragon. Her martial arts had improved day by day as she retrieved the Summer Queen's legacy, and her subordinates were starting to believe in a comeback. Waltz tossed the dice and decided to help the resistors fighting Arthea. She had been planning on fixing the battle lines on the 76th floor, but she realized that no one would defend them if the resistors fell. It was a calculated risk, with the possibility that the resistors would be able to fight Arthea to a standstill, and she had even gone to the 52nd floor herself. The battle lasted longer than expected, and they'd even managed to successfully push Arthea back to the 50th floor with a surprise attack in the middle of the night. White Dragon hoped that they would have a chance to keep Arthea below the 50th floor since other large clans like the Dodd Brethren and the Sea of Time were also moving to keep Arthea at bay. When the battle to force Arthea to retreat began, Waltz launched a raid to attack Arthea's leaders. She even successfully reached the detestable floating castle. Then, they lost. Waltz. Everyone stood up to greet Waltz when she arrived, their faces filled with sadness. They were having a funeral for their dead soldiers. They hung their heads in dismay as they saw the bandages that wrapped around Waltz's entire body. They could glimpse her injuries through her clothing, and her eyes were unfocused because she was temporarily blinded from using too much magic power. Waltz had been seriously injured during a battle with Foxy-tailed Doyle, who were protecting the floating castle on behalf of the Shadow King. She should have been recovering in bed, but instead, she knelt and bowed to the clan members. "I'm sorry." Everyone in the funeral hall was shocked. Dragons were always lofty creatures. Waltz tried to maintain the Summer Queen's principles, and she remembered to stay aloof no matter the situation they were in. Some disparaged her, saying she was putting on unnecessary airs, but the clan members believed in the might of the dragons and followed her. But she was now bowing to them and apologizing as tears dripped down her face. "This is all my fault. This happened because I'm not strong enough. I don't have the face to see you all." Drip, drip. The tears falling from her eyes stained the floor. "Waltz, I want to be alone for now. Would you mind?" "Then all right." Troy escorted Waltz to the sickbed and left with a sigh when he saw Waltz's trembling eyes. Only when he was gone did Waltz sit on the bed and close her eyes. Thoughts flooded through her head. What happened? She had been right on the verge of defeating Doyle in Laputa while the key members of Arthea, Fant, Adora, and Khan, had been busy with the suicide attackers. The war wouldn't end until the Shadow King was eliminated, but Waltz thought it was a good opportunity to raise morale. From what she knew, Doyle was a high ranker, but he was most definitely not a king. And yet, Waltz had lost to him. Right as she was about to slash his neck, a mysterious black-red light flashed and blew her away. What happened to Yin Wu? Even though he was the one to perform the miracle, Doyle also seemed shocked. Now that he had the upper hand, he attacked, and White Dragon were forced to retreat in humiliation, 80% of their suicide troops gone. The Shadow King. Something's definitely changed with him. Waltz knew the black-red light surrounding Doyle belonged to the Shadow King. It exuded the same energy of the contract that connected the Summer Queen to her children. However, there were limits to an apostle's strength, and there was only one reason that an apostle's power might suddenly increase like this: their master's level had increased, as well. Exuviation. Yin Wu had definitely achieved something like HTAT. Thump. She punched the ground in anger. Even though she had unified the 76th floor, she had never been able to complete the 7th step of the awakening. She didn't know why. It should have occurred naturally, but it failed again and again, and she was in a stagnant state. Now that the Shadow King had enhanced his strength, the difference between them had grown larger. She had even been defeated by a mere apostle. The Shadow King was untouchable. White Dragon had lost, and the Resisters were all scattered. Now that she was injured and could no longer fight on the front lines, Arthea cleared through the floors without any challenge at a scary pace. When she asked Troy about it at the funeral hall, he'd said they already reached the 60th floor. She and White Dragon were like a candle about to be blown out by a windstorm. Was there nothing they could do to stand against the tides? Mother, why are you not responding to my calls? Waltz guessed her awakening was failing because the Summer Queen's will in her legacy wasn't responding. Others would be puzzled at this and wonder how the dead Summer Queen would be able to do anything, but Waltz was certain the Summer Queen's will was still alive somewhere. The red dragon spark that continued to flicker in Waltz's dragon heart was proof of the Summer Queen's existence, no matter how small. But if so, where was the Summer Queen's will, and why wasn't she taking care of her children? Why hadn't she shown herself to her faithful subordinates? Waltz didn't know what to think. Was it possible that the Summer Queen abandoned her? The thought occurred to her, but she shook it off. She didn't want to even think of it. She had no desire to become an abandoned child once more, but the doubt began to slowly eat away at her. She suddenly opened her eyes and quickly moved away from the sickbed into a defensive posture. An intense storm of magic power whirled around her. Dear, the princess abandoned by two mothers is still so touchy. Someone appeared through the fog. Amon wrapped entirely in bandages. The sword god grinned at her, his canines glinting. This is the 60th floor, gate of the Great Sword Tomb. Yian Wu appeared through a blue portal, feeling swords of varying shapes and sizes under his feet. He could scent the smell of blood and fire as though a battle had just swept through. The trial of the 60th floor is beginning. Trial. A long time ago during a forgotten age, a species existed that was intent on proving their courage with just a single sword. Other than eating and sleeping, the only thing they did was fight. Many species went extinct after clashing with them. They began to think they were the only great species under the sky, and no one could defeat them. For eons, their species was victorious in the countless battles they fought, and they ruled vast lands. Those they defeated became their subjects, and other species, frightened of their prowess, fought with each other to join them. When there was no longer any land to annex, the species split up into various factions and fought among themselves, choosing to kill their own kind to prove their courage. Eventually, they fought war after war until only one remained, and they disappeared from the world. They became the only species to rise with their own strength and also fall because of it. This is the last battlefield where this species fought. Swords large and small remain in the bodies of their dead owners, only adding to the bleakness. However, the yearning of the fallen species is still strong despite all the time that has passed. Now, prove your courage according to the yearning of this species. If you receive their acknowledgement, you will be counted among the ranks of great warriors. Yian Wu clucked his tongue as he looked at the desolate fields. He'd planned on heading straight for the 60th floor after returning to his climb, but he didn't expect to get here this quickly. I didn't think Arthea would already be here. Doyle said he had awakened along with Yian Wu and forced Waltz and White Dragon to retreat. Now that there was nothing in their way, they had swept their way up the floors to this stage. Yian Wu had been forced to rush from the 52nd floor to the 60th. Although the floors weren't difficult because of his ability, it still took some time because he had to break the stage records. Fortunately, he'd managed them all in a day. Just then, Doyle came out to greet him from the castle after sensing his presence. Yian Wu folded his wings and landed in front of a waving Doyle. Next to Doyle were Heidi and the other children of the forest. They looked at Yian Wu as if entranced because they could feel the aura of a higher being, and something about Yian Wu made others feel compelled to bow to him. However, Yian Wu just nodded at them and turned to Doyle. Did you get what I asked for? I prepared it already, but are you really leaving? Everyone's been waiting for you to return. Doyle pointed at the items the children of the forest brought with a dejected expression. He didn't know how Yian Wu was going to use them, but he could tell Yian Wu was planning on getting straight to business right away without any rest. Fant, Adora, Khan, and the others were all still on the battlefield, working together to simultaneously expand Arthea's influence and clear the floors at the same time. Although they'd probably return immediately if they heard Yian Wu returned, Yian Wu had ordered Doyle not to tell them since he'd only be a bother. Since Yian Wu was currently at odds with the heavenly world, he didn't know what they might do to disrupt him, and so they had to work separately with Arthea on the front lines and him taking care of other business himself. Yin Wu grinned, patted Doyle's head, and put all the objects the children of the forest brought into his subspace. Then, he left. It was time to search for Valdebek. When Yin Wu first entered the 60th floor, a message window popped up with the term, "Our race." This was how the giants referred to themselves. Unlike the relatively well-known dragon race, whose presence in the tower lingered thanks to the Summer Queen, the giants had long gone extinct, and there were not many records left regarding their existence. However, the giants were once great warriors who made countless worlds and dimensions kneel before them. However, that same fearlessness eventually brought them to their ruin, and the only traces of their existence were on the 60th floor. Just as the 50th floor was connected to dragons and was where the ancient dragon Calidus had made his lair, the 60th floor was full of the giants' traces. The Great Sword Tomb was actually a collection of weapons used by the giants during their childhood training. With a little work, most of the swords could still be used now. The giant race's excellent metalsmithing technology, craftsmanship, and ambition were all distilled into their swords, which helped them retain their shape and utility even after so much time had passed. The dragon race had studied and pursued knowledge and truth, but the giant race had taken a different path, and so, Yin Wu did not know what to expect of them. Based on Valdebek, who inherited the blood of the giants, Yin Wu only had a vague impression of the giants. In any case, because of the 60th floor's unique relationship with the giant race, Valdebek had rarely left the floor since he climbed there. The 60th floor was the only place where he could put his mind to rest. Even though Arthea had its own clan house, Valdebek often mentioned that he felt more secure on the 60th floor. Valdebek often reminisced about his childhood with a longing expression. "I often thought that maybe his longing was similar to how I missed my life on Earth. However, the difference between us was that I could return to Earth any time if I retired from climbing the tower while my friend could not." The 60th floor was just an imitation of the giants' home towards the end of their reign, so it could not be said that it was their true residence. It had never been the land of the giants. After reading his brother's journal, Yin Wu speculated that Valdebek had decided to return to the 60th floor after giving up his accumulated privileges and achievements to send Jungwoo back to Earth. Furthermore, Balak also mentioned that the door leading to the giant race's ancient lands is located in this place. The door to the giant race's ancient lands was in a hidden stage located at the bottom of the 60th floor. In a way, it made sense that it would be here, but even though numerous clans and rankers had explored the place, none of them could find the door. In the end, they decided that the 60th floor was nothing more than just an imitation. After all, there hadn't ever been any evidence that giants had ever inhabited the tower, so this rumor became a fact to people. However, after he completed the 60th floor, Valdebek realized that this wasn't the case after all. He knew that the last place the giants set foot on before their extinction was the tower, and if one understood the giants' perspective, it made sense that they would have appeared in the tower. The giants were a race that proved their self-worth through battle. It was a tradition to despise the weak and revere the strong, which allowed the race to become stronger. To them, the world of the tower was like a drug that could not be ignored. With the trials on each floor that tested each player's abilities and the possibility to grow infinitely with the tower's reward system, it was inevitable that the giants scattered throughout the universe and various dimensions would hope to climb it. After all, the tower even provided an easy-to-understand ranking system that allowed individual giants to understand their strength relative to their peers. The giants had climbed up and up, but in the end, Alpharon proved to be an immovable wall that blocked them from going beyond the 77th floor. That was thousands of years ago, and there are hardly any records in existence now. The tower was still in its infancy when the giants were climbing it and vying with Alpharon. It was a time before the various societies in the heavenly world had even properly formed and the dragon race had been established. Nevertheless, Alpharon had already situated himself firmly on the 77th floor and had become an immovable barrier. And, of course, just like the dragons, the giants went through a slow process of extinction. However, while the dragons had been massacred together while trying to challenge Alpharon, the giants fought Alpharon individually instead of as a group. They wanted to challenge Alpharon as proud warriors, not as a race. This point of view caused them to fight each other to see which of them would be a great warrior worthy of challenging Alpharon. That battle had taken place on the 60th floor, and the Great Sword Tomb's weapons were the only things left of the giant warriors who had fought and died, and only the hidden stage contained the traces of their battles and foolish quarrels. The place Balak had discovered, which Valdebek later visited, was the area that contained the remnants of that final battle. However, this was all the information Yin Wu had about the hidden stage. The original books of Revelations were not the only books Yin Wu had seen in the Chenggong library. He'd picked up random books, as well, and so he managed to learn a lot about the hidden history of the universe. The crawling chaos is somehow related to the extinction of the giants. The information on high-ranking beings, such as otherworld gods, was restricted. Only those with high-level clearance could access the heavily guarded information, which meant Yin Wu couldn't read it. If he still had his viewing rights, he might be able to find out more about the crawling chaos, but since he'd used them all up on the revelations, he no longer had the opportunity. However, he had a few theories. The crawling chaos was the one that told Balak about an ancient land of giants. Furthermore, the crawling chaos had appeared using Valdebek's appearance, so there was clearly some connection between the death of the giants and the crawling chaos. Yin Wu thought that the giants had reached out to the crawling chaos, just as the ancient dragon Kalitas had allied with the crawling chaos to overcome Alpharon. However, all of this was only conjecture. Yin Wu did not know anything for certain. Valdebek seemed to know something, but he did not leave any details about it in the letter he had penned while returning Zheng Wu's ashes. I'll find out soon enough. After crossing the stage with his fire wings, Yin Wu finally reached its end and found a hill that was much taller than all the other hills he'd seen in the area. It looked like a magnificent mountain, and at its peak was a huge sword that seemed to easily exceed 1 kilometer in length. The hilt of the sword broke through the clouds and seemed to be reaching for the heavens. The trial of the 60th floor was to be acknowledged by one of the sword spirits that remained in the swords. In other words, one had to be recognized by a fallen giant spirit. Since the size of each sword was directly related to the rank of its former owner, the difficulty in passing the requirements of the floor directly corresponded to the size of the sword. Yin Wu stood in front of the largest sword on the stage. The king of the giants, the great warrior. He folded his fire wings and infused his palm with magic power. The entrance to the hidden stage should be below this. Rumble. The giant's sword grave began to quake, and the rust and dirt that covered it crumbled off. The hard, sharp blade that was dormant under the rust and dirt gleamed coldly. Ch. A hazy gray spirit fluttered over the giant's sword's grave and began to take on a gloomy shape. The giant's spirit body was easily as big as the titans Yin Wu had encountered in Tartarus. However, it was only a spirit and nothing more than the traces of a once great being. The spirit didn't have any sentience and was little more than an NPC that moved as programmed. However, since it was a remnant left by the king of the giants, it exuded an enormous spiritual pressure. A violent typhoon raged as it took form, flattening the surrounding mounds and hills. Those who challenged the 60th floor were close to being high rankers, but Yin Wu wondered how many would be able to contend with such a fierce storm. Not minding the storm's ferocity, Yin Wu patiently waited for the spirit to take its final form. As the various wisps of aura united, a skull took form and looked down on Yin Wu, roaring. Open hollow corner bracket. Who dares awaken the spirit of this great being? Prove your qualifications. It was the same line that spewed out whenever a spirit appeared from its sword grave. Yin Wu had always planned to answer sincerely, but he had no intention of stating an answer only for this single spirit to hear. In order to open the hidden stage, another absolutely ridiculous condition had to be met, to be recognized by all the spirits that live in these sword graves. In an instant, a huge magical field spread out from Yin Wu to the rest of the stage, leaving concentric circles in their wake. When the field enveloped the sword graves with its magical powers, the graves started trembling at once. There were 3,000 sword graves on the 60th floor, and the sight of them all resonating at the same time was a fearful sight. Open hollow corner bracket. Who dares awaken us from our long slumber? Open hollow corner bracket. Who dares awaken us from our deep sleep? Open hollow corner bracket. Which one? About 3,000 large and small spirit bodies rose from their graves at the same time and turned to look at Yin Wu, their ferocious warrior intentions combining into a single killing intent. The atmosphere trembled. Ding! The hidden quest, the Legion of the Great Old Warriors, is being revealed. Hidden quest, Legion of Great Old Warriors. Description: you have disturbed the rest of an ancient race that had been dormant for a long time on the 60th floor. They feel a strong hostility towards the person who has not only destroyed their slumbering peace but also disturbed the peace of others around them. In addition, the fact that a mere creature of flesh and blood disturbed them has caused them offense. The great warrior has declared that you will be sacrificed in tribute to their race. From this point onwards, prove to this legion of the great old warriors that you are not just a mere mortal but a warrior with courage and determination equal to theirs. Exceed your limitations and vanquish them all to prove you deserve your qualification. Restrictions. Time limit. Rewards. 1. The title of Great War Soldier. 2. Entrance to the hidden stage, the Land of the Fallen Giant. 3. The Great Warrior's Sword. Yi and Wu lightly smacked his lips. Even high rankers would have a hard time dealing with just one spirit. For ordinary challengers, the objective of the floor was to prove yourself worthy and not necessarily win. As long as the spirits respected you, you could pass the trial. However, the situation was different for Yi and Wu, who had woken up all the spirits on the floor. He didn't only have to prove himself, but he had to destroy. The floor's system had decided he had insulted them all, and even though Yi and Wu had become strong enough to awaken Lucifer's power, he felt his lips go dry from the killing intent, which was formidable enough to make his skin tingle. Valdebik mentioned he had to go through quite a bit of trouble to get through here, right? In order to enter the hidden stage, he needed to obtain the title of Great Warrior Soldier. When Valdebik had first arrived, he didn't have the strength to defeat all the spirits and struggled quite a bit. However, he did complete the hidden quest eventually. Yi and Wu slowly pulled out the magic bayonet hanging from his belt. It felt good to touch it after such a long time. It would be a lot faster if he could bring out all his familiars from the shadows to deal with the spirits. However, I can't wake them up right now. His familiars had entered into a state of deep meditation to practice and improve for over 1,000 years. Shannon, Hanryong, Rebecca, Boo, even the vampiric lord who had been pulled out of Vigrid had not regained consciousness yet. The fact that they had not woken up after his return meant that they were at an important crossroads. Yi and Wu had no intention of disturbing them at this critical moment. Furthermore, he did not feel that he needed their help, so he was going to leave them alone until they woke up on their own. Just as he reshaped himself, they would soon appear in their own new form. He decided to spread his fire wings and fly away for the moment. Open hollow corner bracket my body. I've been looking for it for so long. But he stole it. Oh, my body, you have it, you're the thief. What? Yi and Wu turned his head towards the great warrior's spirit. It was saying things that were not part of its programmed language. The great warrior's eyes blazed wildly. The level of hostility that Yi and Wu felt from it was beyond anything he had ever experienced. The sealed soul of the great warrior has been released. The soul of the great warrior senses the scepter you and your familiars possess and demand that you return it. The soul of the great warrior has tremendous hostility towards you. From the darkness and void, the soul of the great warrior is attempting to descend through its spirit body. A great demon, infected by the crawling chaos, is descending. All spirits under its control are attempting to reincarnate simultaneously. Skeleton King Tablet. Yi and Wu managed to figure out why the giant spirits suddenly diverged from their scripted responses. On the 40th floor, Yi and Wu had given the Skeleton King tablet to Boo as a means of awakening his previous identity as Faust. The tablet must have catalyzed with the spirits, causing an unexpected reaction. There were no details about the lore of the Skeleton King. His younger brother had also researched the Skeleton King's background and only found unverifiable information, such as how an undead creature had been raised from the corpse of the last giant king or how the Skeleton King had originally been a soldier deployed by the otherworld gods. Yi and Wu felt that it would be difficult to dig out more information about the Skeleton King than what his brother had already found, so he hadn't given it much thought when he tossed the tablet over to Boo. But why is it causing a reaction now? How come this didn't happen when Jung-Woo was here? Yi and Wu's younger brother had made the Skeleton King tablet earlier than he did. Furthermore, considering that Jung-Woo had broken through the 60th floor long before Yi and Wu had even entered the tower, it was difficult for Yi and Wu to understand why things had changed. He pondered what he might have unknowingly included from his brother's path. Open hollow corner bracket give it up. The spirits continued their demands, and the great warrior's spirit transformed into a gigantic undead being. Its muscles and skin were intricately entangled like vines over its hard bones, and it had a bizarre appearance that mixed characteristics of the Skeleton King with those of a giant ghoul. The spirit looked straight at Yi and Wu and grabbed the hilt of a large sword, pulling it out of the giant's sword tomb slowly. There was an earthquake, and the hill where the sword tomb was located began to collapse. Once the great warrior drew the giant sword out completely, its tip reached the sky and a magical field spread out from it in concentric circles. A magic field infused with the magic of the crawling chaos, is spreading throughout the legions of the great old warriors. The legions of the great old warriors have been afflicted with infection. Old warrior 1 foot is mutating. Old warrior 2 feet is mutating. Infected great demon legion has appeared. Like the great warrior, all of the other spirits on the floor transformed into a new form of the undead. Perhaps because they had obtained a new body rather than a spirit form, their ferocity had grown more intense. Boom, 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 the air seemed to boil, and the heaven and earth shook. As the legion's desire for combat mixed in the air, Yanwu felt his skin sting. A mighty force that was not inferior to that of gods and demons raged like a storm, reminding him of the ancient warriors who once proved their worth by commanding and conquering entire universes and dimensions. Vimalasitra smiles quietly while reminiscing about the past. Cernunnos smirks. All gods of death show strong contempt for those who defy death and trying to rise once again. All the demons of death have sharp gazes after observing the appearance of their old foes. Most gods watching the situation are terrified. Most demons watching the situation are rubbing their chins and wondering how they can take advantage of their old foes. Many of the gods and demons of the 98th floor expressed their thoughts and concerns, although the godly societies had the most intense reactions. Just as dragons did not have a good relationship with the demons, the gods had always been in conflict with the giants. The Hidden Quest Legion of the Great Old Warriors has been updated according to the new changes. A scenario quest, King's Proof, has been created. Scenario quest. Yanwu's eyes widened slightly at the phrase he'd never seen before despite undertaking a lot of hidden and sudden quests. Using time difference, he quickly looked through his brother's journal for any clues, but Yanwu could not find anything related about scenario quests. What is this? While Yanwu was asking himself these questions, a new window opened up. Scenario quest Proof of the King the First. Description. In ancient times, there were giants, who have since disappeared. They proved their self-worth through their courage, but the changing tides of time caught up with them. As the years passed, all their traditions and knowledge disappeared. Even those who remembered them or commemorated their existences in tales and lore all disappeared. Valdebik, the last king of the giants and the great warrior, made a contract with an otherworld god to bring back the golden age of the giants. He became the Skeleton King, but even then, he was eventually forgotten. However, the longing that Valdebik possessed during his life remained even after his death. He longed for someone else to succeed him. Thus, Valdebik, and the legion of giants under his command left numerous sword tombs on the 60th floor that contained their thoughts and spirit bodies, testing and observing players for many years. The aspirations of the giants were very simple. They wanted to find someone who would stand atop the entire universe and all its dimensions. The giants longed to step on their foes, regardless of who they were, and obtain the highest peak in the universe. However, in the end, they failed, and so they hoped that someone might inherit their strength and perspective to carry on their aspirations. They wished for the birth of a new king. You have appeared with the tablet that Valdebik cherished, awakening and angering all the giant spirits on the floor. However, they have been tormented by sleep for too long and swam through an endless nightmare. Liberate them all from their ongoing nightmares, which were created by the influence of the crawling chaos, and pass their test to acquire the title of Great Warrior. If you succeed, you will obtain Valdebik's high-level recognition. Conditions. Owner of the Skeleton King Tablet. Holder of the Hidden Guest, the Legion of the Great Old Warriors. Possessor of skill and achievements favored by the giants. Time limit. Reward. 1. Title. Great War Soldier. 2. Entrance to the Hidden Stage, Land of the Fallen Giant. 3. Skeleton King's Sword. 4. Token that symbolizes your position as the first king. 5. Progression into the chain quest. Proof of the King II. I can inherit the power of the giants. Yanwu looked at the contents of the scenario quest, his eyes wide in disbelief. The contents were so unbelievable that anyone who knew even just a little about the giant race and their lands would have gone mad with excitement. In addition, the quest description provided the definitive reason for the giant race's extinction. However, something else that caught Yanwu's eyes, inheriting the power of the giants and the power of the king who had reached the pinnacle of their race. This was by no means something anyone could just overlook. In fact, an ordinary human would be incredibly fortunate just to achieve the dragon body awakening, but it was bordering on the absurd to gain the factors of 3 races. However, if one considered the last dragon king, Kalitas, who had given his power to Zhengwu and Yanwu, it was certainly possible for miracles like this to happen. Not only had Kalidas handled the treasure trove of knowledge left behind by past dragons because of his superior skills and abilities, he also refined and developed the most outstanding qualities of the dragons that Yanwu had inherited. Besides, the qualities and talents of a king of any race reflected outstanding and overpowering skill. The quest screen stated that Yanwu could inherit the qualities of the last king of the giants, the Skeleton King. It was an opportunity Yanwu would not miss, especially since he needed the giant factors. At the same time, Yanwu realized that the crawling chaos truly did have its hands in every corner of the tower, reaching wider and deeper than Yanwu had ever suspected. 6th Dragon Body Awakening. Power fully unlocked. Crack. Yanwu opened up all of his power. As he loosened his restrictions, the power of the Throne of Death swirled in every direction and cleared away the hostility of the infected spirits, who were acting as if they would swallow up Yanwu at any moment. Thud. Yanwu saw the infected Great Demon Legion taking a few steps back as they struggled against his power. For a brief moment, embarrassment crossed their faces before turning into anger at being pushed back by a mere human. Open hollow corner bracket Kuo. Open hollow corner bracket roar. They roared and swung their giant swords at Yanwu together. Despite their monstrous heights, which ranged from several meters to dozens of meters, their movements were nimble. Yanwu increased his magical powers as he tightened his grip around the magic bayonet. As his dragon heart and philosopher's stone resonated with it, the magic bayonet trembled as if it would break at any moment. With a simple move, black and red flames rose like sparks over the blade, reaching high up to the sky. The flames condensed together and made thunderbolts. Sword Thunder. Compressing the meteor sword art to its extreme, Yanwu wielded the power that had been tempered by the original flame. Boom! All the great demons nearby were swept away. Broken sword fragments bounced into the air, and severed limbs scattered all over the ground. The entire battlefield was splattered with blood. However, Yanwu's strike did not reach far enough. Senior warriors raised giant swords and forcefully deflected Yanwu's strike. The sonic waves scattered sword fragments in all directions, instantly flattening all the hills on the stage. Yanwu clucked his tongue. He had used a portion of his sword energy, but they had countered his attack so easily. It seemed that each spirit had power comparable to that of a god. And beyond them was the great warrior, the great demon of chaos. Is it reasonable to expect that the great demon of chaos is on the same level as the king of the demonic sea? Yanwu would not have found it strange if Alpharon suddenly opened a door in the sky and came down to impose restrictions. Yanwu clucked his tongue once more. It seemed that entering the hidden stage would not be as easy as he'd thought. The warriors swung their gigantic swords at the same time and tore space into pieces. A collective sword wind with compressed magic power flew into the sky and poured down on Yanwu's head like rain. Yanwu raised his magic power to its maximum, thinking that it was pointless to hold back. He once again swung the magic bayonet down. A much larger sword energy exploded into the ground. The strike contained so much power and force that it could not be compared to what Yanwu had displayed just a moment before. A crater several kilometers in diameter appeared where his lightning strike hit. Light and heat pulsated as a cloud of dust spread out in all directions. This time around, none of the great demon warriors had avoided injury. Nothing was left. Yanwu's strike didn't even allow spirits to refuse death, and they were all completely incinerated. Even if they tried to endure, Yanwu continued swinging his magic bayonet, pouring out more and more of his sword energy. The infected spirits had no way to resist. They didn't even have a chance to breathe when a huge, dark red lightning bolt came down from the sky and struck the ground. There was no way to avoid it. The stage was destroyed and could no longer be used. The only word that sprang into Yanwu's mind at the sight was, annihilation. He hadn't even moved a single step. The godly society less than diva greater than is astonished over your godlike ability. The godly society less than Asgard greater than screams at your unbelievable skill. The demonic society less than L'Infernal greater than is seriously considering the alliance proposal. Most gods are silent. Most demons are silent. The gods and demons that had been loudly expressing their astonishment fell silent. Yanwu did not hide his actions from the gazes of the heavenly world, unlike when he'd fought the demonism. Infected Old Warrior 32 feet has been added to your soul collection. Infected Old Warrior 2107 feet has been added to your soul collection. A group of shadows quickly spread throughout the battlefield and collected the remnants of the spirits and their souls, sucking them into the soul collection one after another. These might not have been the souls of the giants, but even collecting their thoughts in spirit form was a tremendous harvest. Besides, the souls of the giants who could even fight against gods could not be contained by a mere mortal. These spirit remnants would be of great help in strengthening Yi and Wu's familiars. Pluto, who had not yet recovered their strength, would also benefit greatly. Or perhaps, maybe I should form a new core. Yi and Wu's eyes gleamed strangely. Infected Old Warrior 1994 feet has been added to your soul collection. Now that the torso of the great demon of chaos had been torn apart, only the great warrior's spirit remained. RIP. Open hollow corner bracket and no. The great warrior's right arm, still holding the giant sword, was severed off cleanly. It hovered in the air for a moment, and Yi and Wu could see the great warrior's eyes slightly tremble. Hades' spirit-eating sword. Yi and Wu spread his left hand open and tried to absorb all that was left of the great warrior's spirit. It was a golden opportunity to possess the factors of the giant race. A child who looked around 12 years old was sleeping deeply in thick darkness. She held a white teddy bear that was as big as she was. The child suddenly woke up, her braided princess-like hair falling as she blinked drowsily. She yawned and found her bearings, then spoke in a bright voice, "It's finally time." Hades' spirit-eating sword shows its gluttony. Crunch. Intense winds began to blow along Yi and Wu's open palms. The ground heaved as the stage quaked. Hades' spirit-eating sword had strengthened along with Yi and Wu's level, but even Yi and Wu was surprised when the Gula property of his sin stone revealed itself. It seemed that the stage might be swallowed up entirely. The spirit of the great warrior also shook like it would fall. Its right arm had already been sucked under the sharp teeth of Hades' spirit-eating sword. However, the spirit still continued to resist. Kruru. Its roar boomed through the air, and it thrust its sword into the ground. The spirit endured against the winds, waiting for its magic power to recover. Great demon of chaos, resists, Hades' spirit-eating sword. Hades' spirit-eating sword, reveals more gluttony. Hades' spirit-eating sword, reveals more gluttony. Great demon of chaos, pulls out the chaotic magic power of the crawling chaos, to resist. Yi and Wu gritted his teeth. He thought he'd pushed the spirit to its limits, but it seemed to have some strength left. Perhaps it could instinctively tell what would happen if Hades' spirit-eating sword consumed it. Just as he thought about deactivating the skill and using sword thunder to corner the spirit further, the sin stone trembled and distributed more magic power to his left hand. The stone of sin, Superbia Gula, expresses displeasure. Hades' spirit-eating sword, reveals a new property, pride. It was a magic power more violent and torrential than before. Superbia, the property that dismissed all others as beneath it and forced them to give in, had risen. Hades' spirit-eating sword, uses its pride to crush the struggles of the great demon of chaos. Hades' spirit-eating sword, puts more pressure on the great demon of chaos. All the chaotic magic power of the great demon of chaos, has been scattered. Kyak yak yak. Hades' spirit-eating sword thrashed like a wild beast as it hacked at the spirit of the great warrior. Blood spurted from the spirit's chest and cracks began to appear on its sword. When the attack reached its climax, the spirit of the great warrior shattered into pieces and whirled into Hades' spirit-eating sword. You have successfully gained a large amount of giant factors. You have successfully gained a large amount of giant factors. Messages popped up consecutively. Giant factors have been awakened. Giant factors have been awakened. You have successfully combined the giant factors with the demonic, divine, and draconic factors. Giant blood has been added to your demonic, divine, and draconic blood. Qualities of the giant race are firmly engraved in your demonic, divine, and draconic bones. The awakening of your giant demonic divine draconic body is beginning. Crack. Yi and Wu could feel his body shaking once again as the giant factors were added into the depths of his cells. It wasn't just his physical muscles and bones that were changing, but his soul was also transforming. He'd felt it when the demonic draconic body and demonic divine draconic body had been awakened, but gaining new factors felt like his perspective of the world was shattering, and a new world was opening up to him. The world dragons saw, the world demons saw, and the world gods saw, they were all vastly different because their purposes and paths were all dissimilar. Dragons wished to view another side of the world, demons sought pleasure, and gods desired control. The world of the giant race he was now viewing was unlike any of them, as well. The giants craved to climb higher. They had always looked at a point higher than where they were and contemplated how they could get there. They trampled over their own weaknesses. Yi and Wu felt like this suited him perfectly since he also used any means to climb to a higher floor and planned to eventually crush the tower once he reached the top. The four factors find a balance. As he reveled in the feeling, his soul changed immensely. The human identity that remained in him became fainter as his soul took on a new form. His body attempted metamorphosis a second time. Whoosh! Just as the four factors found their balance and his giant demonic divine draconic body was about to finish awakening. You do not have enough giant factors. You need more factors to awaken. Your level falls short of the requirement. The four factors is not evenly balanced. The awakening of the giant demonic divine draconic body has been paused. Current progress, 42.9%. Darn, Yin Wu frowned. The boost couldn't help him jump over the final hurdle, and he belatedly understood why. He didn't have enough giant factors, even though he'd just absorbed an enormous amount, considering that he'd consumed not only the spirit of the great warrior but also 3,000 soldiers. Even though they were vestige bodies mostly made up of chaotic magic power, it was still a huge amount, but his soul had grown too much. He was already in the process of exuviating, and he would have likely transcended if it hadn't been for Alpharon's interference. He needed even more factors than this already huge amount, so he had to stop and content himself with what he'd already gained. However, there was no need to be disappointed. Given how people didn't have a chance to gain giant factors even if they wanted to, this is pretty amazing. If this scenario quest is accurate, I'll have more chances to gain giant factors in the future. Yin Wu was almost certain he'd have all the giant factors he needed by the time the quest was over. Whoosh! Just then, the light surrounding Yin Wu began to dim. It meant his metamorphosis had been suspended. A cloud quivered in front of him and turned into the giant figure of the great warrior. It shrank to Yin Wu's size, blinking with clouded eyes. Then, the dark eyes that had been infected with the magic power of the crawling chaos cleared. Open hollow corner bracket. I didn't know I'd be able to see the world in this clear state of mind again. Close hollow corner bracket. The spirit of the great warrior closed his eyes and breathed in. The stage had nearly been destroyed from the attacks of sword thunder, but it was a familiar environment for the spirit. Open hollow corner bracket. Even when I was the Skeleton King, I could only wake a few times. This is nice. It's almost a pity I won't be able to stay like this too long. The spirit of the great warrior breathed deeply as he turned to Yin Wu. Open hollow corner bracket. Regardless, thank you, successor. It's all because of you that I can leave with a lucid mind. You're, open hollow corner bracket. Ah. What an idiot, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the last king of the giants, Valdebec. Valdebec. Yin Wu quietly repeated the name to himself. Was it a mere coincidence that the last king of the giant race and the lonely half-giant had the same name? He didn't think so. Nice to meet you, Valdebec. Open hollow corner bracket. Anyway, you or I felt it when I didn't have any consciousness too, but you are quite an interesting fellow. You're not a dragon, a god, or a demon, but you have their traits despite your human form. How is this possible? The spirit of the great warrior was surprised. He had never seen anything like Yin Wu before on the countless battlefields he had fought on. Mortals could only view things on a physical level, but since he could see things on multiple dimensions, the spirit thought Yin Wu was a strange mutant. However, Yin Wu was different from the loathsome otherworld gods because unlike them, it was clear to see what he was created from. However, Yin Wu also seemed in danger to him. Although Yin Wu seemed fine right now, possessing four factors of transcendent beings was like walking around with a ticking bomb. If his level hadn't increased or his body wasn't sturdy enough, he wouldn't have even gotten this far. The spirit was curious how Yin Wu would grow further with his body. Open hollow corner bracket. Well, no matter. Whatever you are, you're the successor who holds my tablet and the savior who has released us from this curse. Ding. You have completed the scenario quest Proof of the King the First. You have made an achievement that is not easily accomplished. Additional karma will be provided. You have acquired 150,000 karma. You have acquired an additional 200,000 karma. You have been awarded the title of Great Warrior. You have been awarded. The continuation quest Proof of the King II has been created. Receive guidance from the Great Demon of Chaos. Messages that he successfully finished the quest popped up. Open hollow corner bracket. First, take this. The spirit of the great warrior took Yin Wu's hand and placed a sword in it. It was a small version of the sword that the spirit had been brandishing earlier, but it had a different property. The sword of the great warrior had been made of metal while this was made up of only spirit energy, and very pure energy at that. It was priceless. Yin Wu could feel the gazes of the gods and demons becoming more focused. An item that symbolized the king of the giant race would be rarer than anything the highest gods or demon kings of each society possessed. From their perspective, Yi and Wu, a potential enemy, was becoming stronger. Many gods express concern at the strength of a forgotten race being awakened. Many demons carefully observe your actions. Tisk. Yi and Wu clicked his tongue at all these unwanted guests. He couldn't get rid of their abilities to watch the lower world even after he cut his channels with them. Yi and Wu lightly tapped the ground and expanded his shadow, which flowed along the ground and even covered the sky, covering the stage in a dome of darkness. Underworld territory has been declared. External interference has been blocked. Yi and Wu grinned when he confirmed the gazes of the unwanted guests were gone. Open hollow corner bracket, a skilled fellow indeed. The spirit of the great warrior smiled widely at the sight. What is this? Open hollow corner bracket. This is a holy artifact that symbolizes great warriors, the kings of our race. It's like a token that gives you courage and chivalry simply by having it on you. Use it to strengthen an artifact or item. The spirit of the great warrior stiffened and he emphasized his next words. Open hollow corner bracket. Take this and save our race and brothers. Close hollow corner bracket. The spirit of the great warrior began to crackle as though it were static. There wasn't much of his vestige left, but each of his final words contained a strong yearning. Save our race and brothers. Was there some other information Yi and Wu didn't know about the end of the giant race? Open hollow corner bracket and it please careful crawl chaw close hollow corner bracket, and with that, the spirit of the great warrior scattered into dust. The continuation quest proof of the king II has been updated. Please open your quest window to check. Yi and Wu grasped at the floating particles of light the spirit had left behind in the shadows. It seemed that he had to figure out what the spirit of the great warrior and his warriors had died trying to fulfill and complete it. However, there was something he felt wary of, the warning that the spirit of the great warrior left behind about the crawling chaos. Was there some relation between the being and the ruin of the giant race? As he continued to guess what happened, he looked down at the shaking holy artifact of the great warrior. The spirit had told him to use it to strengthen anything he needed to. Since it contained all the vestiges and legends of past giant kings, he couldn't use it in vain. Depending on how he used it, it might add powers or skills to it like Hades' spirit-eating sword. If it had the holiness of all the giant kings, it wouldn't fall short of the divine authority of the gods. Then, he'd be able to truly become the giant king's successor, which would be helpful in strengthening his legend. I'm barely getting used to the throne of death, but now I even have the opportunity to become a giant king. I'm not worthy of these positions. Who could have imagined a soldier from Earth would get this far? As he looked at the shaking holy artifact, he decided on how he would use it. Then, Yi and Wu gripped the artifact and smashed it down. Yi and Wu had a lot of thoughts in that brief moment. He had a lot of items that he wanted to use the artifact of the great warrior on. The magic bayonet, which had memories of Jungwoo and Heneva, and Karshina's dagger, which he had fixed himself. He figured that since he already had Vigrid, he ought to strengthen his defensive capabilities. It also occurred to him that he could use it to awaken the sealed powers of the Black King's cast or combine it with Vigrid to end the demonism once and for all. He was aware that if he used it on Vigrid, he would only make it a better vessel for the demonism to manifest in. He didn't forget about the Sin Stone, Dragon Heart, Hades' spirit-eating sword, and Sky Wings either. There were too many items to use the artifact on, and he wished he could just divide the artifact into pieces. But after contemplating for a while, Yi and Wu chose to use it on his shadow. It was where the powers and divinity of the Black King were and where his familiars and souls fell asleep. He thought he'd be able to do more if he added holiness into this territory. Foosh. As though it were slowly sinking in a swamp, the artifact steadily sank in the shadow. The shadow wavered, expanded, then began to shake violently. Shadow territory has been strengthened with the artifact of the giants. Holiness has been added. Now, your shadow will reflect holiness as your faithful servant. Your shadow has various types of potential. Awaken this potential. The shadow shook as though it were glad to see him. Not much had changed in its appearance, but he could tell his connection with the familiars inside the shadow had become stronger. His link to the soul collection also became more sensitive, making it easier for him to read the thoughts of the souls. There was powerful negative energy as well, which meant that if he'd done this before gaining a higher level, his mind might have been overwhelmed. Yi and Wu smiled in satisfaction and ripped the ticket of the hidden stage he had received as a reward. A blue portal opened beneath his feet. It was now time to succeed the Giant King and really begin the search for Valdebek. Whoosh. You have entered the hidden stage, land of the fallen giants. Scenario quest proof of the king II. Description. You have saved the last warriors of the giant race from the illusion of the crawling chaos, and received the title of Great Warrior. You are taking your first steps as the successor of the giant king. However, although you are the successor to the giant king, you do not know why the giant race was ruined or their relationship to the crawling chaos. The crawling chaos stopped the last giant king, Valdebik, before he could tell you about this, but fortunately, you have discovered a location in the tower related to the fall of the giant race, the hidden stage of the 60th floor, land of the fallen giants. This is a location that isn't known to the outside and contains artifacts and sites related to the giant race, as well as traces of the crawling chaos and other otherworld gods. Explore the land of the fallen giants and investigate what happened to the giant race thousands of years ago. You must have this attitude to be a legitimate successor to the last giant king. Conditions. Completion of Proof of the King I. Possessor of title, Great Warrior. Time limit. Rewards. 1. Token of the Second King. 2. Armor of the Skeleton King. 3. Participation in the continued quest, Proof of the King III. Yian-Wu fell into deep thought after reading the information in the quest window. Learn the reason for their downfall. He recalled the Great Warrior's warning to be careful of the crawling chaos before it disappeared. It didn't take a genius to tell something had happened. The Skeleton King was a being that had to awake because of the contract between the Great Warrior's spirit and the crawling chaos. It was undead, but it was a bit different from Kalitas. The ancient dragon had contacted the crawling chaos for knowledge of the outer universe to fulfill his mission, but it felt like the crawling chaos had used the last giant king Valdebik without his consent. Even though he was a great demon of chaos, he didn't hide his emotions regarding the crawling chaos. He was furious, an emotion Yian-Wu knew all too well. Fury towards a mortal enemy. Had the crawling chaos exploited the last giant king's weakness? There had to be some hidden secret of the race that had tried to climb the tower and fought to pick a great warrior among themselves when Alpharaon blocked them. There was a lot regarding the otherworld gods in the revelations. He recalled the information he'd seen in the Changgong library. The crawling chaos was a being who wanted amusement and pleasure because he was exhausted by his long life. Is it possible he knew the giant race's weakness and exploited them as his pawns? Yian-Wu believed that this guess was close to the truth. Otherwise, there was no other reason for the fall of the prideful and destructive giant race. Even though the crawling chaos was a cosmic being that even ordinary divine beings were wary of, it wasn't easy to play around with an entire race. And that weakness is probably related to the stage. Yian-Wu's eyes darkened. So did Valdebik get all the way here? Is this the quest he had to continue instead of looking for Zheng-Wu? Draconic eyes. Extrasensory perception. Yian-Wu expanded his territory of recognition, opening all his senses to quickly get a grasp of the land of the fallen giants. He was in a dense forest with unusually tall trees that were larger than the titans or the great demon of chaos. They were also gruesome to look at because they were formed from the bodies of giants tangled among their vines and roots. There were easily hundreds of thousands of them. The faces of the dead giants were mostly twisted in agony, and they looked as though they'd been tortured. Some looked like they had been frozen in fear, while others seemed horrified, as if something had been chasing them. Yian-Wu could tell a massacre had taken place. What could have caused so much fear and horror in the brave warriors? There was also evidence that their bodies had been experimented on. An acrid, rotten smell rose from the decaying bodies and the swampy ground. Poison from the corpses hung in the air, which meant that the swamp was made up of corpses that hadn't become trees. That was probably the fate of most of the giant race. Poison and noxious smells fill the stage. Warning: this is a territory the Central Bureau has given up on. It is advised that players do not enter it. A strong poison enters your body. Your body is in an irregular state. Your body is in an irregular state. Extreme pain has taken over your body. You have been afflicted with the status, stun. Extreme poison has taken over your body. You have been afflicted with the status, poison. You have maintained your rationality with the cold-blooded trait. The status, stun, has been removed. You have gained a new resistance to pain. Formless poison, skill proficiency has dramatically increased. 16.7%. The formless poison skill is being activated. It is analyzing the properties of the new poison. The skill has successfully found similar data in your database. A more precise analysis will begin. Options, Venom Blood, and Spiritual Spite, have been strengthened. The beings of the heavenly world that followed Yi and Wu had varying reactions. Cernunos frowns at the horrifying scene. Vimalasitra expresses curiosity about the new type of battlefield. Many gods turn away. Many demons are astonished that a place like this can exist. All gods of death smile at the smell of death filling the stage. All demons of death express hostility towards the beings unable to die, remaining on the stage. A place the Central Bureau had given up on, that said a lot about the place. The smell and poison from the corpses were so deadly that if Yi and Wu's level weren't so high, he would have fainted or even died. Valdebic traveled through here. How? The greatest danger here was the traces of the otherworld gods mentioned in the quest window. It's not just the crawling chaos. The magic power of different otherworld gods is still pungent. The magic power was from a completely different source from the type used in the tower. The environment was similar to that of the demonic sea, and in a way, it was even worse. This place also contained the resentment of the dying giant race. He needed to find Valdebic right away in this hell to make some progress, and so he pulled out his magic bayonet and created Sword Thunder. Crackle. His expanding shadow had been blocked from moving some time ago. He needed to begin by pushing this monstrous forest away. Crackle. When he increased the power of his dragon heart, Sword Thunder flashed black-red as it began to crash down. Just as he was brandishing the magic bayonet to sweep the forest away, a rough cry suddenly echoed from the sky, shaking the hidden stage. Crew. The trees shook like bamboo in a storm. Yi and Wu felt his neck go cold when he sensed the level of the being. Where did it come from? Shivers ran down his back at the fact that he hadn't felt a thing even though his extrasensory perception had been activated. When he lifted his head, he could see a strange being with dozens of eyes looking down at him through the branches. Each of his eyes was larger than a human. An otherworld god that shouldn't exist in the tower sent its thoughts toward him. Who are you? How could an otherworld god be here? Yi and Wu's eyes widened. He never imagined that he would discover an otherworld god inside the tower. Of course, the crawling chaos had used Kalitas to deliver his thoughts, and the demonic sea was formed out of an otherworld god's corpse. However, there had never been a situation where an otherworld god was in a hidden stage like this. It was strange that these beings without player status could enter the tower. Even if they were desperate to enter the tower to find the Black King's legacy, their pride wouldn't allow them to submit to anyone's control. It was also too strange that Alpharon had left this hidden stage alone, even if he didn't interfere in hidden stages. However, Yi and Wu put his questions aside. Boom! He instantly brandished his magic bayonet with Sword Thunder at the being. Otherworld gods considered mortals as little more than insects. Since he hadn't exuviated yet, the being probably saw him as a small nuisance, and Yi and Wu could feel its irritation. It wasn't asking a question but instead making a statement about its annoyance and showing its intent to squash Yi and Wu just as humans killed mosquitoes that landed on their arm. That was why Yi and Wu didn't reply and activated Sword Thunder right away. Even if he replied, the being would see it as little more than buzzing from a bug and grow even more annoyed. Sword Thunder soared up like a black-red whip and lashed otherworld god. The being flinched back in surprise, not expecting this much strength from a mortal. Boom, boom. Since Sword Thunder was closer to light than fire, it moved so quickly that before the otherworld god could dodge the attack, it had already reached the center of its body. Fire spread to the rest of the otherworld god's body. Sword Thunder reached high into the sky and dropped lightning bolts back to the ground. Crew. The otherworld god thrashed and screamed in pain as the stage shook. Yi and Wu could see the being was using holy power in an attempt to put the fire because the laws that made up the stage were moving. It was also healing itself at the same time. However, Sword Thunder wasn't easy to put out because of its options. Rumble. Wave of fire, simmering spark. 72 Bian, Yal, Pa. Wave of fire, which was the basis for Sword Thunder, possessed simmering spark, a flame that didn't die until the opponent was dead. When its sparks flew, it caused explosions one after the other, making it a destructive skill against the gigantic otherworld god, especially with 72 Bian on top. There was simply no way that the otherworld god could withstand the attack. The 72 Bian Yi and Wu used was no longer ordinary Bian. The celestial magic was a system for immortal beings who surpassed the limits of mortals, and one's understanding and proficiency changed according to one's level. What was more, Yi and Wu had seen the heavenly demon's movements in the Chenggong library. One of the heavenly demon's faces, the Monkey King, used the 72 Bian, and it was natural that the heavenly demon would also reflect the 72 Bian. Each wave of his hand and each footstep all showed the purest Bian, and it was even the basis for the laws that moved the Chenggong library. As a possessor of draconic eyes and fiery golden eyes, Yi Yanwu couldn't help being entranced by it since it was the ultimate form of the martial arts he wished to reach. It was a peak that even many kings of the one-horned tribe hadn't managed to conquer, although it was possible that the martial king was close. Now that Yi Yanwu had seen it, a new territory had opened up to him. Thanks to this, Yi Yanwu could upgrade the Altman system once again. He combined the 72 Bian with his consciousness, each of his movements reflecting his consciousness as Bian created a system that guided all his skills and powers. Yi Yanwu could tell that he'd grown a step closer to the Yin sword. The first step to opening the Yin sword had been to put all his thoughts and consciousness into the sword and becoming the sword itself to project his thoughts into the outer world. As a result, Sword Thunder was now much stronger than before he entered the Chenggong library. The otherworld god couldn't collect its bearings even after only one attack. Yi Yanwu grew more confident at the sight. It'll work. He had suspected that Sword Thunder would work against the kings of the demonic sea and the otherworld gods, and now he had proof. Of course, this otherworld god was weaker than the crawling chaos, as well. What are you? The being cried out, expressing its hostility towards Yi Yanwu. As it moved holy power, rays of light spread around him and landed on Yi Yanwu's head. Each ray had the strength to sweep away most high rankers, but Yi Yanwu stood his ground and brandished the magic bayonet. 8 extreme swords, break heaven. Flawless strike. He used the same martial art that Martial King had used when he destroyed Kurum, the city on the 11th floor. Rumble. Sword thunder rained down from the sky and destroyed nearly half of the otherworld god's body. The being clearly believed that it couldn't defeat Yi Yanwu, and it tried to leave the floor, stumbling away, bloodied. Where do you think you're going? Yi Yanwu wasn't going to let it go so easily. Clack, clatter. As he distributed magic power to the Black King's cast, the tightly wound chains loosened and began to move. Emptiness opened in pockets around Yi Yanwu, and the chains quickly passed through them. With noisy, clanking sounds, the chains wrapped around the being. Let me go, crew, let me go. The more it struggled from the pain, the more tightly chains wound around it. It attempted to release its physical form and escape didn't work either. Yi Yanwu's chains were made of a metal that had managed to lock even the Black King in emptiness. It would be impossible for a lower otherworld god to escape them, especially since they also contained pieces of the Rui Bang and moved smoothly according to Yi Yanwu's will. Sword thunder continued to fall from the sky, tiring the being out. Eventually, the otherworld god stopped moving, as if it had given up resisting. You, successor. 2. Darkness. How? As it belatedly realizing who Yi Yanwu was, the being expressed his doubt. Yi Yanwu didn't understand the god perfectly, but he thought it was asking how he managed to get this far. Still, he had no reason to reply to the being, and in fact, he thought he should be the one questioning it, not the other way round. He pulled the chains closer. I can't give up like this. It turned its head back and cried sadly. Yi Yanwu prepared sword thunder again, in case the being was trying to attempt to struggle for the last time, then frowned when he saw the being's strange actions. What was it doing? The answer came quickly. Crew. The voices of the otherworld gods rang out as if in response to the cry. The being had called for help. What? There are others. A group of otherworld gods living in the tower. It was unthinkable. One otherworld god was already strange enough that he wanted to capture it alive to study it. If there were more, it was a big problem. Is it related to the overflowing amount of holy power of the crawling chaos on this stage? Even if this was the graveyard of the giants taken captive by the crawling chaos and the crawling chaos, power made the environment similar to the demonic sea, he didn't understand why Alpharon, the Central Bureau, and the heavenly world hadn't done anything about the otherworld gods here. It was certain that otherworld gods were responding to the cry since no other entities had the same holy power of disorder and chaos. I can die here, but you die together. It seemed prepared to use its dead body as bait so the otherworld gods would come to eat it. Even though it had given up on its life, it wanted Yi Yanwu to die since he was responsible for this situation. This instance of survival of the fittest was something Yi Yanwu had already grown familiar with. It was also probably a natural process in the otherworld god's world of disorder and chaos. What a bother. He spoke with irritation as he pulled the chains towards him again. Emptiness opened in his shadow and swallowed the being whole. He was planning on holding the otherworld god the same way he'd trapped the demonism in Vigrid. He wasn't concerned about the amount of space in the shadow because it had been strengthened with the artifact of the great warrior. It actually worked out well. Clatter. He released more chains. The otherworld gods on their way here were probably at least at the same level as the being he'd captured. Since there was almost no information about otherworld gods, he thought if he captured them, he could experiment on them and learn more. He would also be able to discover why the hidden stage was in this condition and why it had been left alone. Brahm and Boo will be happy. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to capture all of them, but the more specimens he had, the better it would be. The situation had changed so much from when he'd run away from the creatures in the demonic sea. Clatter. The black chains twisted like snakes waiting for their prey. The forest had turned to ashes from the sword thunder attacks, leaving only dreary winds behind. Yi and Wu's golden eyes almost seemed crazed. Boom, 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 boom. Dozens of otherworld gods appeared, obscuring the sky over the forest. They didn't express much of their consciousness and seemed focused only on killing Yi and Wu, who was violating their territory. Their first attack was powerful since they'd already confirmed one of their own had died. Countless rays of lights and tentacles fell on Yi and Wu. Just when Yi and Wu was about to counterattack, something large suddenly appeared through the burnt grass and grabbed his waist. You are crazy. The creature was too large, almost 3 meters in height, to be called human. Scars covered his entire body. Yi and Wu was about to shake the intruder away but froze when he saw his face. In the meantime, the intruder carried Yi and Wu in his large left arm and attempted to escape. He swung a sword that was bigger than his body with his right arm. Boo-boom. The ground turned over and a giant wave of magic power blew the attacks of the otherworld gods away. The otherworld gods gathered more holy power to attack again, but Yi and Wu and the intruder were already gone. They couldn't feel the presence of the two humans at all. Crew. While the otherworld gods expressed rage at losing their prey from under their nose, Yi and Wu was hiding in a barrier behind a huge rock with his rescuer. What are you? It's impossible to open hollow corner bracket fight them. It's not just 1 or 2 of them but 10s of them. Are you out of your mind? The intruder was about to shout at Yi and Wu then quickly changed to open speaking because of his inarticulate speech. The anger on his face was plain to see, but Yi and Wu couldn't speak easily either as he looked at the person in front of him, the same person he'd been looking for. Valdebec, this is where you've been hiding. Open hollow corner bracket close hollow corner bracket. Valdebec remained silent for a moment, glaring at Yi and Wu. It seemed he knew who Yi and Wu was. His personality is different from the diary. The Valdebec Jung Wu remembered was always simple and kind. Sometimes in battles, he did go mad and run forward without looking back, which was how he got his nickname Sword Yaksha, but he normally had a timid personality, not able to say anything mean to others. It was why he was constantly teased by his companions, and it was also the reason why he'd been deceived by Balak in the end. However, the Valdebec in front of Yi and Wu was nothing like that. His eyes were blazing, and he looked unyielding. On top of that, the scars filling his entire body showed how rough the battlefields he'd been fighting in were. The madness that exploded whenever he grabbed his sword had also been quelled to a fierce fighting spirit. He looked like a warrior who fought numerous battles. But his slow pronunciation was ever the same. Valdebec didn't speak out loud, but used open speaking instead, probably because he could deliver his thoughts faster this way. Open hollow corner bracket your ###, right. Yi and Wu's name was blurred out again because it was still marked as confidential data. But Valdebec had said the word, Cha Yi and Wu, directly, meaning he knew exactly who he was. Did Jung Wu tell you my name too? Open hollow corner bracket in passing. He must have muttered by name when he was drunk. Open hollow corner bracket you're spot on. Valdebec wordlessly looked Yi and Wu up and down again. Many emotions flashed through his eyes at that moment. Since he was looking at the exact same face his old friend had, he was probably having mixed feelings. It was understandable since they had started together from the tutorial and stayed good friends. Then, Valdebec forced his complicated emotions aside and sighed. Open hollow corner bracket haa. I couldn't say for sure but you really came all the way here. He narrowed his eyes at Yi and Wu. Open hollow corner bracket and the way you cause trouble is like your little brother. How can brothers be so similar? No, Yi and Wu snorted. I'm way better than him. Face-wise and personality-wise. Open hollow corner bracket close hollow corner bracket. Valdebec looked at Yi and Wu with a flabbergasted expression, like he was wondering what kind of nonsense he was listening to. He clicked his tongue. Open hollow corner bracket your narcissism is also the same. Only the way you speak is different. Don't your other companions complain about that? I'm only speaking the truth. What would they complain about? Open hollow corner bracket, you really are brothers. Valdebik shook his head while Yi and Wu brushed it off. Before that, there's something I want to ask. Open hollow corner bracket, what is it? This place is inside of the tower, but why are there so many otherworld gods? Crew. Valdebik was about to reply when the crying of the otherworld gods rang in the sky again. The stage shook once more. The sky trembled as if it was about to come down. The gods began to fight with each other, still angry that they had lost their target. Valdebik watched the scene and slowly stood up. Open hollow corner bracket, I don't think it'll be easy to continue speaking here. Let's move first. Follow me. He didn't wait for Yi and Wu's response before he began moving. The barrier moved along with him. He seemed used to the situation. Yi and Wu also used wind path to step after Valdebik. The place he led him to was far off from where Yi and Wu had first arrived at. Multiple barriers were layered over a large plain. When Yi and Wu entered it, he could see a mass grave with countless gravestones lined up. The cabin Valdebik was staying in was located behind the graves. That grave is. Open hollow corner bracket, why do you ask when you already know? They're graves of my dead race. Although I wasn't able to bury them properly. Come in. Valdebik's tone was a bit sharp. Yi and Wu could feel the exhaustion dripping from his words. A half-giant who chose to be a gravekeeper, it seemed Valdebik was retrieving the remains of the giants and marking these gravestones one by one. He was doing what no one had asked him to do in solitude. It would be strange if he wasn't sharp, since he was keeping at his job in the midst of the dangers from the otherworld gods. The cabin he was staying in was quite large. Since he had a hefty size, it couldn't help but seem big to Yi and Wu's standards. The interior was only filled with the bare necessities, displaying his personality. It's the same. The layout was the exact same as the structure of his room still in the clan house. Valdebik was also unable to escape from the ghosts of the past. Open hollow corner bracket, this is the only thing I have to give, so take it without complaint. The teacup he roughly placed in front of Yi and Wu, so big Yi and Wu didn't know what it was at first. Is this a wash basin? He could barely tell it was a teacup because of the designs Valdebik had added to it. Looks like he's still bad with his hands. He must have brewed coffee at some point because black water filled the wash basin like teacup. My stomach will explode if I drink this. It was the first time Yi and Wu had received so much coffee at once, so he wondered when he'd be able to drink it all. The handle of the cup was so thick that he had to drink it with two hands. It reminded him of when his friends poured him a large batch of drinks when he had his first vacation off from enlistment. He gave his impression after a few sips. Bitter. It wasn't just bitter, it was extremely bitter. Valdebik frowned. Open hollow corner bracket, it's an item from your home planet though. Despite giving the coffee in a standoffish attitude, Valdebik had been watching how Yi and Wu would react to the coffee. There weren't many coffee beans in his backyard, so he was trying to be as generous as possible to his visitor. He couldn't help but be irritated that Yi and Wu complained about the coffee after drinking his helping. But Yi and Wu ignored Valdebik and asked in an expressionless face. You made this in the recipe Jung Wu gave you, didn't you? Open hollow corner bracket, how? Valdebik's frowning face shifted a bit. It's obvious. That bastard can't even drink coffee. He thinks the bitter the better. Have you been drinking that bitter stuff all this time? Open hollow corner bracket, at first it was hard for me as well, but after drinking it over time the taste grew on me. Close hollow corner bracket. People on Earth enjoy espressos, but most of them savor it slowly, not gulp it down like they're drinking beer. Open hollow corner bracket, close hollow corner bracket. Even if the taste cells of the giant race are different from humans, there should still be some similarities since you're a half-giant. Open hollow corner bracket, close hollow corner bracket. You thought this bitter coffee fit this weary place, didn't you? Open hollow corner bracket, close hollow corner bracket. How can you think exactly like Jung Wu? Open hollow corner bracket, close hollow corner bracket. Yi and Wu, frustrated, stopping drinking the coffee and stood up. Do you have a kitchen? Open hollow corner bracket, over there. But why? I'll change that strange tongue of yours. I'll use the kitchen for a bit. Open hollow corner bracket, close hollow corner bracket. Yi and Wu didn't wait for his permission and entered the kitchen, his and Valdebik's coffee cup. Valdebik stared blankly at Yi and Wu's back. Why had he stuttered and excused himself? The way Yi and Wu led the atmosphere and made others speechless seemed different from Jung Wu. It was a visitor who was similar to Jung Wu but not quite and had Jung Wu's face. Valdebik closed his mouth and was silent for a while. Try this. A moment later, Yin-Wu put a new cup of coffee in front of Valdebik. It was a brown milk. Valdebik looked between the alien object and Yin-Wu doubtfully. Open hollow corner bracket. Did you mix coffee with milk? It was impossible to understand with his line of reasoning, as he'd only been gulping down bitter espressos all this time. It's a caramel macchiato. Open hollow corner bracket. See Cara what? Looking at Valdebik being flustered because he couldn't repeat the pronunciation, Yin-Wu sighed again and rubbed his temples. Caramel macchiato. It's perfect for people who lost their sense of taste like you. I substituted the milk and caramel syrup from Earth with something else since we don't have it here, but it should taste alright. It had already received positive reviews from the head elder in Brahm, so he wasn't concerned. He got a headache thinking of how he avoided the other one-horned members who came after him after hearing the news. The ingredients were all in his subspace, so it wasn't that difficult to make it. Valdebik looked at the coffee with a still doubtful face, then took a sip with a grimace. Good. This. He spoke out loud before he knew it with his eyes wide. Open hollow corner bracket. How did you make this? Yin-Wu lifted a corner of his mouth. Business secret. Valdebik's face crumpled again. Open hollow corner bracket. You're the same as Jung-Woo in this aspect. Don't just drink it like that, but take it cold if you have ice too. You might like that better. Valdebik drank the coffee as Yin-Wu taught him to and exclaimed in astonishment. His mouth was joyful to drink coffee this sweet after drinking all that espresso. Valdebik's bright smile was a change from the dark expression he had since Yin-Wu met him. Yin-Wu smiled along with him. Open hollow corner bracket. I'm full. You foolishly drank over 10 bowls, so it'd be weird if you weren't. Yin-Wu clicked his tongue looking at the teacups that weren't teacups piled next to Valdebik. The dead gluttony emperor would be ashamed if he saw. Open hollow corner bracket. Don't say I'm foolish. Then let's say you have a large appetite. Open hollow corner bracket. Close hollow corner bracket. More importantly, I want to talk now if your stomach's full. Valdebik clenched his fists because Yin-Wu didn't let him win a single argument. It was more annoying since he was saying all this with an emotionless face. Jung-Woo would have laughed at least. But Yin-Wu's appearance was also unprecedented for him. He did think one of Jung-Woo's family members would enter the tower after receiving the letter, but he felt strange now that it had really happened. He felt especially complicated because Yin-Wu had the exact same face as Jung-Woo. I've been searching for you all this time. You know why, right? Valdebik nodded heavily. He had sinned. Open hollow corner bracket. I heard Jung-Woo appeared in the tower and Arthea was resurrected. I guessed that one of Jung-Woo's family members was pretending to be Jung-Woo to take revenge. And I've also been preparing since then. Valdebik hung his head. Open hollow corner bracket. I'll willingly give you my head if you want to kill me. I have no excuse for myself. But I have one request. Please just give me a little time. I have some unfinished business. After I'm done, I'll hand over my head myself, so please allow me some time. Yin-Wu opened his draconic eyes to look at Valdebik. Imperfections were clumping and dispersing next to him. He was speaking the truth. He truly was prepared to die. Yin-Wu clicked his tongue and closed his eyes. I guess you weren't completely abandoned. Yin-Wu muttered to himself. From Leonhard to Valdebik, Yin-Wu said he found it difficult to forgive them, but he found himself becoming less angry. They had buried their feelings for Jung-Woo in their hearts even after he was dead. I'm not interested in taking your head. Open hollow corner bracket. What? I'm almost done with the revenge anyway, and all that's left in that bitch Viera. Your head makes no difference. Open hollow corner bracket. Close hollow corner bracket. But if you still want to apologize to Jung-Woo. Open hollow corner bracket. Pay him back by living as my sword. Open hollow corner bracket. Was it so unexpected? Valdebik stiffened. Open hollow corner bracket. What? Close hollow corner bracket. Pay him back by living. Work with me. Help me kill Viera and break the tower. Valdebik's eyes widened not just in confusion but also shock. Open hollow corner bracket. Are you saying that despite knowing that Viera has swallowed Mother Earth? Of course. I already clashed with her a few times. Yin-Wu scoffed and described how he'd led the Walpurgisnacht to ruin and fought the war with the Titans and Giants in Tartarus. He also explained how the Titans and Giants took over Olympus and he succeeded to the throne of death. Valdebik's expression was full of disbelief when he heard Balak and Viera had worked together to control the Elohim and tried to manifest Olympus in the lower world. Open hollow corner bracket. I did hear you resurrected Arthea and defeated Walpurgisnacht, Elohim, and others, but I didn't know all that happened. He murmured contemplatively. Open hollow corner bracket. But the throne of death. I know Jungwoo attempted exuviation through the legacy of the dragons, but you chose a completely different method. You can't even be called human anymore. Wait, then close hollow corner bracket Valdebik looked at Yeonwoo with a flabbergasted expression. Open hollow corner bracket I guess it's not that strange that you tried to fight the otherworld gods. Valdebik was slowly gaining hints of exuviation and transcendence as he uncovered the secrets of the giant race, and it was shocking for him to encounter a mortal who could go toe-to-toe with transcendence. Mortals and transcendence weren't even on the same level, and only after successfully going through exuviation and gaining transcendence could a mortal stand a chance. However, Yeonwoo was doing things out of order. In fact, the reason Valdebik had run to rescue Yeonwoo was that he'd thought an unlucky player had somehow wandered into this place and drawn the attention of the otherworld gods. The otherworld gods usually ate the players right away, or else, they played with the players until they were bored and killed them. Now that he heard what Yeonwoo had been through, it was clear that his rescue had been unnecessary. He didn't know if Yeonwoo could deal with dozens of otherworld gods on his own, but he probably would have been able to stay safe. Are you talking about this guy? Yeonwoo grinned at Valdebik and spread his right hand open. Emptiness opened over his palm, and Valdebik could see the things trapped within it. Crew, an otherworld god Valdebik was familiar with, was screaming in pain, tightly bound with black chains. The being's aura spread out of the emptiness, shaking the cabin. Valdebik's mouth dropped open, and Yeonwoo chuckled. Although Valdebik tried to put up an imposing attitude, he still had some of his naivety left. Open hollow corner bracket I see that it was pointless to rescue you. To think the breath of a blind city would be trapped in a place like that. Close hollow corner bracket Valdebik shook his head. Was there anyone else in the tower who could capture an otherworld god alive? He didn't think so. Even the Summer Queen, who had lived for thousands of years, probably never imagined it. When Yeonwoo covered his hand, closing the emptiness, Valdebik looked back at him. Open hollow corner bracket if you can properly use what you have, killing Mother Earth might be doable. Right, open hollow corner bracket, but you know you need to get past Alpharon first. Of course, I plan on pulling Alpharon down from his position. Open hollow corner bracket how? I need to become as strong as possible, and I'm focusing on strengthening not just my familiars but also Arthea. Open hollow corner bracket is that why you want me to become your sword? Yes, there's going to be even more trouble waiting for us after defeating Alpharon. Valdebik thought of the beings on the higher floors that Alpharon was blocking. While it was known that they were split into two main groups, gods and demons, and further divided into many more societies, there were no other details about them. However, one thing was for sure, once the heavenly world opened, the hierarchy would never be the same. Valdebik knew this because he'd been retrieving the legacy of the giant race. Perhaps it was a blessing for the beings of the lower world that the gods and demons had been trapped in the heavenly world. Open hollow corner bracket that's quite an ambitious plan. Valdebik realized that to Yeonwoo, Alpharon was only an obstacle blocking his destination. However, to some players and races, Alpharon was a wall that blocked their fate. In fact, the otherworld gods invaded the hidden stage without getting further because of Alpharon. Open hollow corner bracket is that what you mean by breaking the tower? I have to take whatever's at the top and break the tower for my vengeance to end. In the end, Yeonwoo's final revenge was the destruction of the tower. So, I'll say it again. He narrowed his eyes. Return to Arthea, Valdebik. As someone who's inherited the power of the giant race, you'll be of great help for my ambitious plans. Open hollow corner bracket I feel more at ease since you want me because I'm useful instead of pitiful. Ha ha ha, Valdebik laughed. The sadness on his face had disappeared, and there was a slight smile on his lips. Yeonwoo realized Valdebik had already made his decision. He didn't mention that he was searching for his brother's soul by chasing darkness. Dominating the tower was a clear goal, but he wasn't as sure when it came to his brother's soul. Anything regarding the Black King felt like homework that he had to finish himself. Open hollow corner bracket that's the best thing I've heard in a while. I want to follow you immediately, but close hollow corner bracket he smiled bitterly. Open hollow corner bracket I can't. I'm already a servant of the crawling chaos. Servant, something flashed in Yeonwoo's mind as soon as he heard the word. The crawling chaos had definitely looked like Valdebik when he first met the being. What happened? Open hollow corner bracket I suppose it's time to tell you my story. Valdebik smiled grimly and began to speak. Open hollow corner bracket aren't you curious why there are otherworld gods in the tower? Yeonwoo's eyes slightly widened. He had been wondering why they were here, even if this was a hidden stage. Is it related to what you were doing? Open hollow corner bracket a bit. As you've seen already, this is a graveyard of giants. At the same time, it's also an illusory world the crawling chaos and other gods have created. Like some holy territory. What? Open hollow corner bracket the giant race didn't end because of their own greed a long time ago. They were used. Yian-Wu thought of the things he'd been wondering about. The last giant king who didn't quite fit the description of the trial, Valdebeach's complaints, the scenario quest. He began to guess that the relationship between the crawling chaos and the giants was. Open hollow corner bracket you've already caught on. You're right, the giant race were slaves of the crawling chaos. Yian-Wu was dumbfounded. Open hollow corner bracket to be exact, they are an unlucky race who were leashed as hunting dogs. Close hollow corner bracket the giant race was famous for putting courage and honor first, but there was something more important that they treasured above all else, their family. Open hollow corner bracket I don't know how, but the crawling chaos took giant children and elders as captives, forcing the warriors to bend to his will. The warriors who had always dominated became victims for the first time. Maybe you can call it karma. He smiled bitterly and continued. Open hollow corner bracket the warriors couldn't abandon their families. They entered the tower because the crawling chaos ordered them to. Open hollow corner bracket correct. In other words, they were the advance party. Yian-Wu felt the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The crawling chaos had always planned to enter the tower, but due to Alphorone and the heavenly world, there were limits to what he could do. As a result, he used the giants instead. The giant race was on equal standing as the transcendence of the heavenly world and was also skilled in battle. What was more, the tower didn't reject them, so they were perfect for the crawling chaos to use. Open hollow corner bracket the plan was for the crawling chaos to slowly enter the tower through the path the giant race opened. Then, he would infect the tower with his holy power. Then this hidden stage is a type of outpost. Open hollow corner bracket yes. Valdebeach's face was dark. Open hollow corner bracket the warriors had no other choice since their families were hostages. But there was a problem. Alphorone. Open hollow corner bracket yes. Even the mighty giants could get past him. The warriors were forced to come to a final decision after realizing they might not be able to rescue their families close hollow corner bracket. They fought to see which of them was the strongest here on the 60th floor. They thought they could choose a great warrior and could give all their power to that giant so he could defeat Alphorone. It was a gamble, but there was nothing else they could do. Am I right? Valdebeach nodded and continued. Open hollow corner bracket but even that failed, and the crawling chaos abandoned the giants once he no longer had any use for them. Yian-Wu could see what happened without listening further. The giants' corpses mixed among the trees and rocks were probably the families of the warriors who had been. The horror on their faces was most likely due to the crawling chaos. You have succeeded in uncovering the secret of the giant race's end. However, there are more secrets you have not yet learned. Collect the additional secrets. Yian-Wu moved the messages aside and said, this is what you were searching for. Open hollow corner bracket yes. Then why are you a servant of the crawling chaos? Open hollow corner bracket would you believe me if I told you there are survivors? What? Open hollow corner bracket I was forced into a contract with the crawling chaos to protect them. At that moment, the door flung open and a little boy with a basket came in. Creak. Mister, Mom says it's time for you to eat. I brought food. Although his face was still very young, the child was at least as tall as Yian-Wu. His eyes widened when he realized a human was in the cabin with Valdebeach. The basket in his arms dropped to the ground. Ah, ah. Valdebeach sprang into action. Before the child could scream, he struck the child's neck and the child fell to the floor. Valdebeach carefully caught the child and sighed. Open hollow corner bracket I didn't realize we've been speaking for so long. And that child, open hollow corner bracket this is a descendant of the group of survivors. He's had to live away from civilization. He's stuck here, so he's a fallen divine being what the tower calls a half-giant. Yian-Wu's eyes grew bigger. He was surprised to learn that half-giants, who were thought to be children of giants and humans, were actually fallen descendants of the giant race. How many more of these half-giants are here? Open hollow corner bracket I heard there were quite a lot at first, but that number continued to decrease now there's just over 100. Valdebeach stroked the child's head with a heavy expression. Open hollow corner bracket the crawling chaos didn't touch them. There was no need to, really. From his point of view, the half-giants are bugs who can't even be used as hunting dogs. Valdebeach's eyes took on a sad light. Open hollow corner bracket. Unfortunately, this place pretty much turned into his holy territory because it's filled with his holy power. And the remaining giants must have found it difficult to survive. Is that why you made a contract with the crawling chaos? To protect them? Open hollow corner bracket. Yes. Fortunately, he was quite interested in me. He said I was well informed about the tower and perfect to use. I'm not trying to brag, but I think I'm the closest to my ancestors too. Yin Wu recalled when he first met Valdebec. He had released a level that pushed the otherworld gods away. Valdebec was stronger than when he was still in Arthea. Yin Wu could see why the crawling chaos would be interested in using him. Open hollow corner bracket. So as you can see, I can't leave this place. I don't know what you came here to do, but you should get out as soon as possible. The crawling chaos might realize you're here. Valdebec said he'd open a portal for Yin Wu. Yin Wu could see the emotions in Valdebec's eyes as he told him to go. It was an emotion he knew as well, resignation. It was an expression of despair found in those who'd given up because there wasn't a way out. Those were the same eyes as the ones Zheng Wu had when he lost all his friends. Yin Wu hated looking at them. Crack, he clenched his fist and gritted his teeth. Anger boiled inside of him. Let me just ask you one thing. Open hollow corner bracket. What is it? The ticket you earned after completing a quest. How come you didn't use the ticket that could take you to any timeline or planet but used it on Zheng Wu instead? Valdebec didn't speak. Tell me. Open hollow corner bracket. That was the only thing I could do to repent for my sins. If you used it, you could have taken everyone here and returned to your homeland. Open hollow corner bracket. It was too late to close hollow corner bracket. It wasn't because you needed help. When Valdebec saw Yin Wu's fierce eyes, he was speechless. His dead eyes began to shake violently. Weren't you trying to tell someone you needed help? You were asking for a way out and for someone to rescue you, am I right? Yin Wu shouted with a twisted face as the cabin shook. He hadn't noticed the aura of his level flowing out. Don't drag it out and just tell the truth, Valdebec. What do you want? What were you trying to ask for? Open hollow corner bracket. I mean, we close hollow corner bracket. Valdebec's eyes and voice trembled. A tear dripped down his cheek. Open hollow corner bracket. Save us. I will grant that wish. The sky wings suddenly unfurled on Yin Wu's back and he was surrounded by a black-red light as if he were a god descending. Valdebec watched breathlessly as Yin Wu continued his declaration. As your king and god. You have completed the scenario quest Proof of the King II. You have made an achievement that is not easily accomplished. Additional karma will be provided. You have acquired 150,000 karma. You have acquired an additional 200,000 karma. You have received the reward, Second King's Token. You have received the reward, Skeleton King's Armor. You have declared you will become the new king and the new god of the giant race. Your declaration has been announced to the entire heavenly world. All gods and demons will be watching you. The godly society less than Olympus greater than shows hostility at your arrogance. The godly society less than Asgard greater than looks at you with distaste. The godly society less than Diva greater than watches you with concern. The demonic society less than L'Infernal greater than has sent a message of congratulations. All gods of death nod in satisfaction at your decision. All demons of death smile widely at your declaration. Vimalasitra waits for the day you'll ascend to the heavenly world. Cernunnos repeats that you shouldn't forget his spirit. As the descendants of the giants, half-giants are a fallen race that still possess transcendence. To become their god, you have to attain great accomplishments equal to their standing. According to your declaration, the difficulty is increasing. The scenario quest, Proof of the King, has been updated to Proof of the King and God. You have begun to walk the path of a god. A new legend has been recorded in the legend, Fight, that you currently possess. Your future divine powers and domain will be based on the rank of the legends you earn. You have acquired an additional 300,000 karma. The continuation quest Proof of the King and God 3 has been created. Scenario quest Proof of the King and God. Description: you were silent upon hearing the reason for the fall of the giant race from Valdebec, the descendant of the giants. You felt grief learning about their fall from divinity. After long contemplation, you have announced you will protect them and led them as their king and god. However, the descendants of the giant race do not trust or believe in you as their king and god. To gain their trust and belief, you must create legends. From this point onward, you must create a new legend. First, you must teach the lost half-giants about their mighty ancestors and restore their pride. Furthermore, you have not yet finished a proper examination of the historic sites of the giants. There is a secret related to the giants at the sites. Take your half-giants to investigate and uncover the secret. Prepare for their upcoming independence. Conditions. Completion of the Proof of the King II. Possessor of title, Great Warrior. Time limit. Rewards. 1. Faith of Giants and Followers plus 100. 2. Third King's Token. 3. Skeleton King's Gaiters. 4. Participation in the continued quest, Proof of the King III. Yianwu felt something change in his body after he made the declaration. His soul grew bigger and his level higher, like when he first began exuviation after reading the revelations in the Chenggong library. It was probably the result of his announcement. Speech also contained magic power, even if it was just a little bit, and it could influence the system. His future achievements and rewards could change based on the things he said. Also, as a being with a higher level, his words had more impact. Since it was the first time Yianwu announced he'd become a god, his soul changed accordingly. Even though they had fallen, the half-giants were still descendants of the giant race, who had stood on equal footing with the gods. Announcing that he would rule over them had huge repercussions. Yianwu realized this was another opportunity to attempt exuviation. If he upgraded his position like this, he'd gain much more power. You have paused exuviation. Your level is fixed. However, he chose not to exuviate too rashly like last time. If I do it here, I'll definitely gain divinity, but I can't become like the vampiric lord. This place was the territory of the otherworld gods, where Alpharaon didn't interfere, so he could safely complete exuviation without anyone bothering him. But Yianwu decided not to after thinking of the vampiric lord, who had been stuck in the demonic sea. She spent hundreds of years hiding her presence in case Alpharaon discovered her. Yianwu didn't want to do the same. He still had lots to do and many floors to climb. I can re-attempt exuviation anytime. Another thought occurred to him. If I continue to postpone exuviation while my soul grows, what'll happen if I only continue to gain divinity? Just because he postponed exuviation didn't mean he wasn't growing at all. Even if his progress was slow, his soul was still growing. The quality of his soul became more refined as well, as though it were a bird still in its egg taking on a firmer shape. He wondered what would happen if he remained immortal but continued to grow his soul. Would exuviation take place automatically after he passed a certain limit? What would he look like then? Or is there something greater beyond that? Yianwu organized his thoughts and cleared his head. Swish! When he sensed the aura around him settle back down, he opened his eyes. At the same time, he could feel something connected to his soul, channels. However, these channels were quite different from the connection he had with the gods and demons he'd stolen powers from. They were channels under him. A channel similar to the one he had with Doyle was connecting him to Valdebek. Your follower, Valdebek, shows extreme faith in you. Valdebek was on one knee, reciting a prayer with his sword stuck in the ground. He looked reverent, like a holy knight asking for a god's blessing. Yianwu couldn't get used to the sight of the 3-meter-tall giant kneeling, but he realized the stronger Valdebek's faith was, the more it would influence him and increase his power. It was a strange yet mysterious feeling. He felt like he wasn't himself. A feeling of being able to hold everything in the world swept through his soul. Yianwu understood why the gods and demons tried to interfere in the lower world so much. If the passionate faith of just one person felt like this, how would it feel to have more followers and faith? He also understood why they had split into two groups and created societies. It was easier to write legends that way. Being in a society meant sharing greater legends, and the beings at the peak of the societies would naturally become mightier. At the same time, a question rose in his mind. How could Alpharaon, who didn't have any followers, deal with the entire heavenly world alone? What exactly did being the apostle of the tower entail? Open hollow corner bracket. This is it, sir. Yianwu followed Valdebek into the village where the half-giants lived. Valdebek peered at him on the way they traveled here. Yianwu clucked his tongue. Hey, Valdebek. Open hollow corner bracket. What? I mean, what seems to be the matter, sir? You don't have to speak formally to me. Just act the way you were earlier. Open hollow corner bracket. Can I, sir? I mean, can I? I don't want to hear formal speech from my little brother's friend. Open hollow corner bracket. Then I'll just talk like this. It was the faith between a god and their follower that was important, not formalities. The reason why ceremonies and rules were so important in a religion was that gods couldn't talk to each follower individually. Formalities were put in place so followers would be reminded of the mightiness of their god and not do anything to stain their god's honor. Valdebik didn't need to speak formally since he had a direct relationship with Yin Wu, and it felt awkward for Yin Wu to enforce it. Valdebik obviously felt more at ease after Yin Wu's permission. His awkwardness made him look pitiful to Yin Wu, and he thought that acting would never be in Valdebik's future. Valdebik led him to an area not too far from the cabin. It was filled with houses on the verge of collapse. The half-giants had scraped together rickety buildings in order not to stand out to the otherworld gods and end up as their toys. What a mess. Yin Wu clucked his tongue. He couldn't believe the environment this rare, almost extinct race of the tower was living in. He didn't see any storage places for weapons or smithies that giants should always have close by, as well. He understood they were a fallen race, but were the descendants of the giants really living here? There was an even bigger problem. The half-giants showed up one by one after receiving signals from Valdebik. Each of them looked petrified. Yin Wu could feel their fear all the way to where he stood. Their bodies were clearly untrained as well. If Valdebik hadn't urged them to appear, it was obvious they wouldn't have come out. Restore the pride of these guys. Yin Wu momentarily felt a sense of hopelessness as he thought of the updated quest. The half-giants were like cattle. He couldn't feel the power of the giants coming from them at all. He'd offered to rescue them because he thought they might have some of the courage of their ancestors, but he was wrong. He'd forgotten how fearful Valdebik had been when he first entered the tower. If it hadn't been for Jung Wu and the skills he learned from his butler, he might have retired quickly. Yin Wu had only remembered Sword Yaksha Valdebik and forgotten what he'd been like as a half-giant. We've got a long way to go. But he wouldn't give up. If Valdebik could grow, it meant they could, as well. Although they might be weak now, after some training, they'd become a unit of warriors no player in the tower had. And for that, I'll have to make them work. Yin Wu grinned wickedly. The half-giants trembled as they looked at him. A shadow unspooled to reveal the figure cocooned inside it. Is that Shannon? Yin Wu's eyes widened in surprise at the unfamiliar appearance of the entity he'd summoned. Shannon had already been larger than most players, but he'd now grown past 2 meters. His aura was remarkable even though he was just standing there. The black energy around him was similar to Yin Wu's shadow, but it had a depth, as though it would suck in everything in the vicinity. As he continued looking at Shannon, Yin Wu realized what had changed. It was the smell of death. Shannon was exuding a ferocious, predatorial scent that could pull in all living beings. It was also the smell of fight, a power that suppressed the weak and displayed one's fighting spirit to the strong. Is it my holiness? It seemed Shannon had been influenced by Yin Wu's position and gone through metamorphosis. His classification had also changed. Death Lord. Position. Familiar. Description. As a lord who rules over death, he will lead to death all those who reject his master. He has the ability to control hell. As your first familiar, faithful knight, and mighty general, he will work to spread your will in this land. Special notes. His strength is currently transforming into something new. You will need to wait until it is complete. A Death Lord. Previously, Shannon had been a Death Noble, and now he'd risen 1 level. His powers were definitely befitting a lord. The information in the special notes section stood out to Yin Wu. Ruck, the strength he'd stolen from the Gluttony Emperor, was evolving to a new stage. He wondered what Shannon would be like once it was finished. He's already on the level of the 9 kings. In some ways, he might be even more powerful than they are. Yin Wu was happy. Strength was always welcome. No, this might be a natural result. Shannon and Hanryong had intensively studied Heaven Bracket to improve their martial arts, unlike Yin Wu, who had to focus on martial arts, magic, alchemy, and the Black King's powers. Even Yin Wu sometimes learned new things from Shannon's enlightenment regarding Flame Wheel and Shinmokryong. Shannon had also seen the heavenly demon and opened his eyes to a new world through the revelations. Since he'd spent nearly 200 years, or 1,000 years in his consciousness, meditating, it would have been odd if he hadn't made any progress. Open hollow corner bracket. What is this? Valdebik's eyebrows twitched as he looked at Shannon. Chills ran down his body and his eyes turned dark. He looked like he had seen an old enemy. Yin Wu grinned. Shannon was agitating Sword Yaksha, who fought with the otherworld gods. Shannon had come a long way. In fact, he'd probably grown the most apart from Yin Wu. Although he was sometimes annoying when he joked around, he was the closest companion Yin Wu had. Yin Wu replied with a smile. My familiar. Open hollow corner bracket. What? This creature. Close hollow corner bracket. Valdebik muttered in disbelief, turning to Yin Wu. He shook his head. Yi and Wu trapped otherworld gods in emptiness like it was nothing, so there wasn't anything unusual that he'd have familiars like this. If Yi and Wu had more, then it wouldn't be impossible to free them from the crawling chaos like he promised. Just then, blue flames blazed within the darkness under Shannon's black helm. Flash! It was Inferno sight, the eyes the dead needed to see the physical world. Open corner bracket, where is this? His voice was dry and cracked, as though it had come from the depths of hell, and Valdebek felt shivers run down his back again. Yi and Wu seemed unaffected. Wake up, Shannon. You've slept enough already. The black energy around Shannon dispersed as he began to rise. CHH. His movements were creaky, like a machine that hadn't been used for a long time and was being activated again. However, more black energy began to flow through his joints, making his movements smoother. Clack, clack, creak. He used his sword breaker for support as an intense energy storm whirled around him. His shadow spread along the ground. The rickety half-giant shacks were swept away by the winds and almost collapsed. Valdebek quickly emitted magic power to turn the winds around as Shannon slowly looked at Yi and Wu. Open corner bracket, nice of you to summon me so fast. Shannon's voice was still dark. He seemed dissatisfied, but Yi and Wu was used to this. I had some things to do. Open corner bracket, thanks to you, we were dying of boredom since we only lived through you. Yi and Wu hadn't been able to tell how much time had passed because he'd been absorbed in the revelations, but that wasn't the case for his subordinates. Although they shared the same time as he did, they were still separate beings, and it made sense that they would feel tedium. There were limits to how much time they could spend meditating, after all. Shannon was a bit upset that Yi and Wu had forgotten about them. Open corner bracket, I was right on the last step. Did you have to wake me up now? The evolution of Ruk could be a new achievement for Shannon. Just as Yi and Wu had the holiness of death and fight, Shannon could use Ruk as a new legend as well, and he was disgruntled since Yi and Wu had woken him up when he was on the verge of completion. Don't be upset, it'll take some more time, but you can finish at any time, right? You've waited for 1,000 years, so what's wrong with a few more months? Open corner bracket, HMPH. But it's still, if you don't want it, I'll give it to someone else. Open corner bracket, damn it. Why doesn't your temper ever change? Sheesh, close corner bracket. Shannon grumbled at Yi and Wu, who wasn't giving him the chance to complain. Actually, Yi and Wu had planned to let Shannon sleep until he woke up by himself, but the situation made it necessary to wake him. Valdebek looked at Shannon with a blank expression. He couldn't get used to the sassiness of the creature who'd just exuded a fierce aura. Open corner bracket, what? You've never seen a dead guy before? Shannon sensed his gaze and took his anger out on Valdebek. Valdebek wondered what nonsense he was talking about. Open corner bracket, I guess it is your first time. Then you'll see a lot more in the future. People die in masses in front of King Temper here. Valdebek was still speechless, but he understood what Shannon was saying. Shannon turned back to Yi and Wu with a flippant tilt of his head. Open corner bracket, so why'd you call me? You said you were a training instructor at Red Dragon, right? Open corner bracket, so, thinking of the half-giants trembling in front of him, Yi and Wu said seriously, there are some people you need to guide. Open corner bracket, hey, master. What? Open corner bracket, how about you just swallow all these things instead? No, open corner bracket, come on, give it some more thought. You can get the giant factors you've been looking for, train them more easily in Dis Pluto, and life will be easier for me. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone, I'm going to cut off communication with you. Open corner bracket, shit. Then what do you want me to do with these? Yi and Wu silenced Shannon's defiant tone by blocking the channel. He felt like he could see Shannon stomping and shaking his fists in anger, but it was better to pretend not to know anything. He realized Valdebek was looking at him with concern. What is it? Open hollow corner bracket, I'm just wondering if it's all right to do it like this. As you can see, they become even more timid if they're pressured to do something. I just have all these worries, close hollow corner bracket. Yi and Wu and Valdebek left the half-giants to Shannon and were on their way out of the village, but Valdebek was still concerned. The half-giants were used to being dogs in kennels. He had been trying to change them for a long time, but they had grown used to their situation. If anyone tried to force them to do something different, they'd just shrink back even further. They'd just left them behind with Shannon, whom they were seeing for the first time. Even Valdebek could feel Shannon's intimidating spirit, so it was obvious what the half-giants would feel. In addition, based on the way Shannon talked back to Yi and Wu, it was plain that Shannon wasn't exactly reliable. It's fine. However, Yi and Wu just silenced his concern. Open hollow corner bracket but. It'll work. Open hollow corner bracket still. It will. Valdebik couldn't continue. Yi and Wu focused on creating a path to travel on as he spoke. I know what you're worried about. People can't change overnight, so it'll be difficult for them. People all have different characters and grow up in different environments, and it's dangerous to force them to suddenly change. Under normal circumstances, it's true that we should take the time to slowly change them. Valdebik was quiet, but we don't have the luxury. This place is becoming a dangerous environment for the half-giants to live in, and the situation on the higher floors is changing by the day. To survive there, something needs to be done. Yi and Wu thought the tower was experiencing its greatest changes since its birth. The conflict between the heavenly world and Alpharon was growing worse, and the otherworld gods were trying to enter the tower more frequently. There would be a great disturbance not too far in the future. If the half-giants wanted to survive as giants and not die out, they needed to bear the pain and quickly change. From what Yi and Wu could see, the timid half-giants didn't require persuasion or motivation, he needed to force them, even if they resented and despised him. He could handle the backlash later. A king sometimes needed to be firm. Knowing Yi and Wu meant well, Valdebik couldn't say anything more. All he could hope for was that the half-giants could follow along. More importantly, Yi and Wu changed the subject to lighten the mood. Is this really the path? Open hollow corner bracket yes. I don't know if this is the place you're looking for, but according to the half-giants, this is where our ancestors resided. Yi and Wu checked the description of the scenario quest again. His first task to prove himself as the god and king of the giant race was to explore and examine the historic sites. The quest said they contained a secret the giant race had left behind. Did they leave something for their successors? That was what Yi and Wu suspected. Unless the giants were fools, they wouldn't have acted as the crawling chaos, hunting dogs without preparing a counterattack, although they'd gone extinct before they could try it. If so, there would probably be something related to it at the sites. Open hollow corner bracket this is it. Yi and Wu and Valdebik stopped. They could see the ruins below, temples, villages, and empty land. If Valdebik hadn't led the way, Yi and Wu would have walked past it without a second thought, believing it to be just another part of the wasteland. Yi and Wu spread his fire wings open as he scanned the sites. It was large, almost hundreds of meters wide. What a mess. Open hollow corner bracket it's inevitable since they've been forgotten for thousands of years. Considering that otherworld gods are actively roaming the area, I think it's a miracle at least this much is left. Bitterness filled Valdebik's voice. Yi and Wu nodded in agreement while also feeling at a loss. Was he supposed to dig under the entire area like some archaeologist? It would take years because the area was too large. He spread his extrasensory perception along the territory, even underground. But there's nothing out of the ordinary. There were old artifacts the giant race had used buried beneath the earth. Perhaps Brahm or Bu might have been excited to see them, but they didn't mean much to Yi and Wu. He was wondering whether he needed to summon his souls to examine the territory more carefully when he realized that there was an extraordinary number of stone monuments around the borders of the territory. Stone monuments. Open corner bracket master. Just then, he could hear a familiar voice in his head. It was Bu. He hadn't awakened anyone other than Shannon, so why was Bu awake? Open corner bracket gather the stones. Bu continued to speak without explaining. Although his voice was as jerky as usual, Yi and Wu could feel his excitement. Realizing Bu had sensed something, he quickly circulated his dragon heart. Valdebik. Open hollow corner bracket what is it? Step back. Before Valdebik could ask why, Yi and Wu spread his magic power around them. Valdebik stepped back in surprise, and a layer of magic power extended around the entire territory. Influenced by the wave of magic power, dozens of stones resonated as one. Most of them were weather-beaten and the words written on them were long gone, but they glowed and floated up in the air. Then, they began to fit into each other like puzzles, combining into a single large stone. When it fell in front of Yi and Wu, he could see strange letters chiseled on its surface that were shockingly familiar. Open hollow corner bracket this is. Valdebik's eyes widened at the secret of the territory. He'd never discovered anything during the entire time he was on this stage. The Emerald Tablet. It means they're the revelations. Open hollow corner bracket what? Valdebik turned to Yi and Wu in surprise. Yi and Wu quickly skimmed through the revelations and exclaimed in astonishment. The stone contained the parts that he hadn't been able to read in the Chenggong library. Valdebik, it looks like your ancestors tried to swallow the crawling chaos. Open hollow corner bracket what? Valdebeach's eyes widened in bewilderment. He had heard of the Emerald Tablet before. It was the stone tablet of civilization that Faust had so passionately studied. However, he had never heard of the revelations. Before he could ask a question, his face stiffened at the multiple gazes that suddenly fell upon them. The godly society less than Asgard greater than examines both of you. The godly society less than Olympus greater than glowers at both of you. The godly society less than Diva greater than watches both of you. The demonic society less than L'Infernal greater than reviews your contract of alliance to update it. The demonic society less than Gia sect greater than closes their mouth. It was the first time Valdebec was receiving this much attention from the heavenly world. Although the beings always watched the lower world, they didn't react to it. They only talked among themselves as if they were watching a play. It was rare for them to take action because they believed it was beneath them. Valdebec did receive some attention from gods and demons after becoming the successor of the giant race. However, most players didn't even draw the attention of one being. That was the reason why apostles were the rarest among the rankers who passed the 50th floor. It also went without saying that the higher a divine being's rank was, especially if they were a superior divine being, the less interest they had in the lower world. Viera Dune was the only exception Valdebec knew. Even Cha Jung-woo, who raised a storm in the tower, only received attention from a limited number of gods and demons. Valdebec had never seen entire societies move to action like this. He was astonished. However, Yian Wu acted as if it were a natural thing to happen, and he even smirked at how predictable they were. They're desperate. Open hollow corner bracket. What is going on? I told you, we found the revelations. It seems like your ancestors were preparing for a counterattack using them. Open hollow corner bracket. Speak more clearly. I don't understand a word you're saying. What are the revelations, and why are they like that? Valdebec shouted. He felt displeased at the immense attention the gods and demons were suddenly giving him. They'd ignored him when he begged for help to rescue the half-giants, but they were suddenly roused just because of this item. Yian Wu grinned and explained what the revelations were. He said it was a book that contained all the history and secrets of the universe from beginning to end. Although the author was unknown, Yian Wu said having just a part of the knowledge could give you powers that surpassed the laws of nature. He explained it all in a teasing way, as if he were provoking the gods and demons looking down. The beings were probably frustrated that the revelations were right in front of them, but they couldn't reach it because of the laws of causality. Yian Wu was throwing this in their faces. Open hollow corner bracket. So the reason you're this strong is the revelations? Yes. Open hollow corner bracket. And it's also the reason why those things above are so desperate. The revelations might contain hints that will free them from the laws of causality. Open hollow corner bracket. Ha! Valdebec scoffed in disbelief. Although the beings acted lofty because they were transcendents and immortal, in the end, they were just creatures that acted according to their desires. He clucked his tongue, his forehead creasing. Open hollow corner bracket. But how did my ancestors come to have this? I don't know. Yian Wu laughed. His gaze was still fixed on the skies. Valdebec felt like the gazes of the heavenly world were trying to suppress their anger. But I do know for sure your ancestors were braver than those things. The godly society less than Chan sect greater than protests timidly. The crawling chaos has a part of the revelations. It's likely the giant race stole this from him while they were acting as his hunting dogs. They probably realized what the revelations were and tried to use them. I'm guessing they hid the revelations in different places, and this is just a part of it. Yian Wu had learned this from the message that had just popped up. You have successfully solved the first secret of the sites. There are still uncovered secrets. Please investigate more carefully. But it was probably difficult for the giants to find the chance to attack. The crawling chaos doesn't show any weakness, and they were also worried about the captives as well. It seems they left the revelations for their descendants to use. Open hollow corner bracket. A legacy for us, so they weren't just simple hunting dogs. Valdebec muttered to himself, chuckling. He was pleased. It was like his ancestors to resist until the end and not give up. He'd never seen them before, but he could sense their intense yearning from these sights. Anyway, things will become easier with these. Open hollow corner bracket. How? Valdebec still didn't understand how amazing the revelations were, so he cocked his head in confusion. To him, the revelations were only a hidden card and not something that could completely turn the situation around. They hadn't found all of the revelations yet, and even if they did, it would take time to train the half-giants. How could things become easier? Yian Wu smirked. His smile seemed wicked and devious. Valdebik instinctively flinched and stepped back as Yianwu looked up at the sky. How? It means we can use the revelations to control the guys up there. The godly society less than Malik greater than is silent. The godly society less than Dilmun greater than is silent. The godly society less than Olympus greater than wordlessly glares at you. The demonic society less than Niflheim greater than looks at you bitterly. Open hollow corner bracket ah. Valdebik finally understood. Since there were so many groups interested in the revelations, he and Yianwu could take advantage of their desire, just as the crawling chaos had used the giants. This time, the giants would use the gods and demons. Valdebik no longer needed to beg the heavenly world to help. Yianwu didn't hide his intentions. In fact, he was completely brazen about them. Look at them, isn't it funny? What's funnier is that they were hostile to me some time ago because I refused to share the revelations with them. His smile grew wider. But now they're walking on eggshells around me, hoping they can just have a little piece of whatever's left over. How stupid it is that people worship them. Yianwu shook the stone in the air and shouted, "What are you doing? If you want a bite, you should get down here and wag your tails." Rumble. As soon as he spoke, the sky trembled as dozens of lightning bolts rained down to the ground. It was so intense that Valdebik moved back in surprise, but Yianwu stood steady, a smirk still on his face. Asgard's envoy, Thor, attempts to manifest. Chansek's envoy, Erlang Shen, attempts to manifest. Dilmun's envoy, Nabu, attempts to manifest. Niflheim's envoy, Fenrir, attempts to manifest. Giasek's envoy, Wang Lingguan, attempts to manifest. Storms of energy whirled where the bolts landed. Valdebik's eyes widened. It was an event that rarely occurred in the lower world, the descent of transcendence. It wasn't an easy feat since they had to make sacrifices for the law of causality and avoid Alpharon's prying eyes. Even if they did descend, they couldn't remain in the lower world for a long time, and this was a world filled with the holy power of the crawling chaos and otherworld gods. Descending an incarnation to this place was impossible with just any sacrifice. However, each society willingly paid the price, stumbling over each other to be the first to send their envoys who were all high-ranking members of their respective societies. Thor was Asgard's greatest warrior, Erlang Shen was one of the three pillars who held up the Chan sect, and Nabu was the only son of Marduk, the leader of Dilmun. Some of them were hostile to each other. Fenrir, in his wolf form, growled at Thor, while Wang Lingguan frowned upon seeing Erlang Shen. However, while they didn't hide their enmity, they didn't start fighting. If they fought now, they'd use up the limited amount of the laws of causality they had. Also, since they were here as envoys, they had to be respectful. It was an unwritten rule that had never been broken ever since the creation of the heavenly world. Does that mean everyone here acknowledges that .. has the same level as they do? Valdebik trembled once more from shock. These were the transcendents who treated mortals like bugs. Who could ever imagine it? Although their pride was probably hurt, none of them showed it. The revelations Yianwu possessed was likely only part of the reason why. It meant they acknowledged his strength as well. I mean, we are serving an incredible god. Valdebik realized how amazing Yianwu's prowess was and began to have more hope. They might really be able to escape this horrid hell. Thor, the first to descend, began to speak. Befitting of the god of thunder, his voice boomed throughout heaven and earth. Yellow sparks crackled around him. Open hollow corner bracket ha ha ha. As expected of the Black King's successor. You're amazing each time I look at you. I knew you would create incredible legends, and I've been waiting for that day to come. You deserve to walk by our side to rule over the world. KRRR. The aura he exuded was as great as his booming voice, and the other envoys around him had to heal their nearly broken bodies. None of them were beneath Thor in divinity, so no one was hurt, but they still frowned in displeasure. Yianwu felt the same. Hey. Open hollow corner bracket what is it, mortal? Do you have an offer? You're noisy as hell, so lower the volume. Thor's expression went blank. No one had ever spoken to him like that in the thousands of years he'd been a great warrior. Yianwu scoffed at him. It looks like you're trying to take the upper hand by calling me immortal. Boom. Black-red bolts suddenly rained down right next to Thor. If any landed on him, he would have been in trouble since it was sword thunder. Thor's face stiffened. Dropping lightning on him, the god of thunder, was an insult, but he had seen how dangerous sword thunder was from the heavenly world. It was a clear display of strength telling him to restrain himself. Don't do anything foolish. If you get on my nerves, there won't be any negotiations or anything like that. The gods and demons were all shocked by Yi and Wu's threat. They probably hadn't imagined they'd be humiliated like Thor, especially by a mortal they'd been lending powers to in the hopes of using him as their apostle. Open hollow corner bracket. I thought we had some camaraderie between us as warriors. Was that my mistake? Thor suppressed his rising anger and tried to plead to Yi and Wu. Too much talking. I'll take Asgard out. Open hollow corner bracket. What? Before Thor could continue, the other envoys, who were waiting for an opportunity, moved as one. Sharp winds and fire rained down on him. Thor's incarnation was destroyed before he could resist. There was no mercy between the gods and demons. All they cared about was getting rid of competition. After Thor was gone, the envoys looked at Yi and Wu like puppies that wanted compliments from their owner. Good job, keep it up. Yi and Wu smiled darkly. From now on, you're all dogs. Dogs that have to bark and bite whenever their owner tells them to. Open hollow corner bracket. That's going too far, hash hash hash. I mean, Death King. Open hollow corner bracket. Please be more careful with your words. The envoys all stiffened when they were compared to dogs. They knew that they were all under Yi and Wu's thumb, but this kind of humiliation was too much for them. However, Yi and Wu just crossed his arms and scoffed. Leave if you don't like it. Open hollow corner bracket. What? Vayu, are you leaving? Is this what Diva wants? Vayu was about to speak, then froze when he felt the other envoys carefully watching him. They were ready to attack and eliminate him just as they had done with Thor. Vayu clenched his teeth. He had never been treated like this before. Diva was a godly society on par with Olympus, Asgard, and the Chan sect. It was overwhelming in scale, with thousands of gods as members. 8 Lokapala gods ruled over them, and over them were 3 sovereign gods who were said to have peaked at the universe's creation. Vayu was one of the Lokapala and ruled over the northwest. He was famed for his wins, and even among the envoys, there weren't many who were equal to him. He'd never been treated like this before. To make matters worse, some of the divine beings looking at him warily now were allies of Diva. If they attacked and chased him away, the alliances would be cancelled, or in extreme cases, war would break out. However, the allies were willing to go that far for a chance to possess the revelations. The revelations were so priceless that societies risked ostracization just to have it. Vayu glared at the gods who abandoned their pride as transcendence to become a mere mortal's dog. They probably believed that all they had to do was endure, and they'd be rewarded later. They probably planned on attacking Yi and Wu after gaining the revelations. However, Vayu knew that once you became a dog, you would stay in that lowly position forever. Open hollow corner bracket. Fine. If you want a dog, I shall become one. But there was nothing else he could do. The revelations contained wisdom beyond the gods and demons. He couldn't let the other societies take it for themselves. Diva had to have it, and if they couldn't, no one else was allowed to have it. Is that it? Yi and Wu's eyebrow twitched as he smiled. Open hollow corner bracket. I shall become your dog, sir. Vayu immediately bowed and apologized. Yi and Wu smirked at him. The other envoys clucked their tongues when they realized that Yi and Wu was giving Diva another chance. They had thought that they would be able to get rid of their most dangerous competition. Vayu narrowed his eyes at them, exuding a murderous aura as if he were warning them that he'd rip them apart. They quickly looked away, not confident about fighting with him one-on-one. Instead, they watched Yi and Wu carefully, planning to get on his good side. It was difficult to believe these were truly gods and demons. Getting rid of one is enough. I need to get the most out of these guys. Yi and Wu kept a smirk on his face while he carefully examined the beings in front of him. He'd only eliminated Asgard to show that he wouldn't kneel to them. Now that his point had been made, he didn't need to get rid of Diva, particularly since they were too big to discard. Valdebik was still speechless from the shock. But they should be here about now. Why don't I see them? A few of the envoys he'd been expecting hadn't arrived. It was understandable that the small societies couldn't handle the laws of causality, and the societies that weren't interested in the lower world wouldn't care to participate. However, 2 societies had signaled their participation, and he couldn't find them at all. Did they have a change of heart? He wouldn't have cared normally, but they were the 2 societies that Yi and Wu needed abilities from the most. They represented absolute good and absolute evil, which were the best means of writing legends. Yi and Wu needed them to resurrect the giants. They were probably aware of this, too, and they were probably planning their offers to him. However, if they were trying to assert their dominance by taking their time arriving, he would eliminate them ruthlessly. Yi and Wu might need them, but they needed him more desperately. He had no intention of allowing the societies to use him when he had the revelations in his possession. Although having good and evil was ideal, he could just create something similar. He waited for a little while longer, but the two societies showed no reaction. The envoys began to mutter among themselves, wondering why Yi and Wu was just standing there. Finally, Yi and Wu turned away without any lingering attachment. Just then, he felt something in the air and looked up. What great manners they have! The sky opened and black lightning landed on the ground. The envoys flinched from the extraordinary demonic energy that was so intense, it seemed to have the ability to shred their incarnations. Only Wei and Erlang Shen were unaffected, but they couldn't help frowning and showing their hostility to the demonic energy. The owner of this energy storm was the enemy of all the godly societies. He was the second in command of L'Infernal, which represented absolute evil. It was the infamous leader of the East Demon Army that had invaded countless dimensions and universes and crushed gods. Open hollow corner bracket Agaras. Open hollow corner bracket The Grand Duke of the East is here. Madness and destruction are here. Swish. The black demonic energy scattered like fog, and Agaras appeared with his dozens of black wings. Open hollow corner bracket It always seems to me that the air of the lower world is so stale. Is it because of the energy the otherworld things left behind? This is worse than normal. Agaras muttered with a face so beautiful that it seemed completely androgynous. He frowned at the other envoys who stared at him. Open hollow corner bracket What do you think you're looking at? How dare you lowly creatures? Whoosh. The demonic energy began to soar up like a tsunami again. This time, even Wei and Erlang Shen stepped back, raising their holy power. The quality of the demonic energy was incomparably violent. When the powers of madness and destruction that represented Agaras combined with the storm, the demonic energy seemed to bare its fangs like a hungry beast. Open hollow corner bracket Are you trying to take what's mine? How should I deal with you? Should I cut off your heads and use it to decorate my throne, or should I pull your eyes out and make a necklace out of them? Each word he spoke shook the heavens and the earth. At the same time, his demonic energy became fiercer. He was angry since he was the one who'd watched Yi and Wu from the start, and it seemed like more and more entities were taking an interest in Yi and Wu. He wanted to get rid of these annoying bastards now that he was here. The storm wasn't simply a warning, it also contained killing intent. If no one intervened, he would have begun fighting with the gods and demons. However, the appearance of a new entity made him stop. Open hollow corner bracket How about you stop throwing a tantrum now, Agaras? Swoosh. A bright light appeared like a blooming flower in the dark air, splitting into the colors of a rainbow before it revealed a woman with white wings and pure white energy that seemed to be at the opposite extreme of Agares. Just standing in front of her calmed the soul and raised one's health and magic power. Agares' storm faded away. His frown deepened when he saw her since she wasn't someone he could easily touch. She was an archangel who was part of the seraphim. She managed the Annunciation and always had the Ark of the Covenant with its knowledge and wisdom on her back. Open hollow corner bracket Gabriel. Gabriel smiled and waved her hand. Open hollow corner bracket Hi. Long time no see. She acted like she was seeing a friend she hadn't seen in a while. Agare's expression was still dark. Open hollow corner bracket I thought Malik wasn't interested anymore after Azrael ended up like that. Did you have a change of heart? Open hollow corner bracket What can I do? It was an order from the higher-ups. Open hollow corner bracket What? After the Archangel Azrael who ruled over death had been eaten by the demonism, Malik decided to only observe Yi and Wu and not interfere. Darkness was in opposition to their light, but they had no intention of becoming enemies in Yi and Wu. Suffice to say, they simply avoided him, and after Yi and Wu allied himself with L'Infernal during the war with the Titans and Giants, they distanced themselves from Yi and Wu even further. Malik and L'Infernal weren't just different groups, they couldn't coexist peacefully. Agaras couldn't help feeling wary at Gabriel's arrival. Was it really an order from the Prime Commander of Malik, Metatron? Open hollow corner bracket Do you think I know what Argeezer thinks? If I don't want to be fired, I have to do what he says. Metatron from the godly society less than Malik greater than looks at Gabriel in disapproval. Open hollow corner bracket Oh okay. Sheesh. Glare much. Metatron clicks his tongue at Gabriel's lowbrow speech. Metatron urges Gabriel to stop with the nonsense and get to the point. Open hollow corner bracket C. That's Argeezer for you. Metatron frowns. Metatron adjusts the laws of causality Gabriel is using. He warns that any waste of the laws of causality must be paid back. Open hollow corner bracket That narrow-minded fool. Gabriel protested to Metatron. Agaras muttered to himself as he watched them. Open hollow corner bracket just why? Then, as if he realized something, his twisted expression stiffened. Open hollow corner bracket I see. Agar's eyes turned cold. Open hollow corner bracket you need the Book of Enoch. Gabriel shrugged. Open hollow corner bracket I won't deny it. We're not doing too well these days. But you're probably in the same state, aren't you? Don't you need Lemegeddon? The greater demon in L'Infernal who stood behind Agaras replied instead. Baal from the demonic society less than L'Infernal greater than laughs wordlessly. Metatron observes Baal. Baal watches Metatron. While the two leaders and commanders of absolute good and absolute evil looked at each other, Vayu and the other envoys frowned when they saw that Agaras and Gabriel weren't fighting despite being in close proximity to each other. Everyone keenly felt the importance of the revelations. Open hollow corner bracket anyway, I've come down to be a dog, as I was ordered to. What should I do, master? Gabriel shrugged and turned back to Yi and Wu. Agaras and the rest of the envoys turned to him as well. They were curious about the commands he planned to give him. Would he order them to help train the half-giants? They would willingly share some of their powers. Although the gods disliked being used to resurrect the power of their enemies, the giants, they could give up a tiny amount that wouldn't affect them. They were even willing to give artifacts or elixirs as long as they could have the revelations, or even a fragment of it. No price was too high. It was impossible that Yi and Wu wouldn't know what they were thinking. He already had some ideas about what he wanted them to do. The first and most important step was to recover the lost potential of the half-giants and help them regain transcendence again. This wasn't something that could happen overnight, but there were times when shortcuts were allowed in legends. You too. He turned toward Gabriel and Agaras. I'd like you to make me the fruit of good and evil. The fruit of good and evil is considered one of the greatest treasures in history, along with Olympus, ambrosia and Diva's soma. As the symbol of the origin of evil which caused the first humans Adam and Eve to be banished from Eden, it's also a holy artifact that contains immense knowledge and wisdom. Since it also contains many laws of causality, anyone who absorbs it will exuviate and transcend easily. It's also a way to draw out any transcendence that the laws of causality have hidden. Sometimes, I wonder, if I could get it somehow, would Kalitus be able to attain his goal of resurrecting the dragons? Open hollow corner bracket the fruit of good and evil. Gabriel, who had been speaking confidently as if she were ready to do whatever Yi and Wu asked, froze at his request. On the other hand, Agaras burst out into laughter. Open hollow corner bracket ha ha ha. It was a laughter filled with so much madness that those listening shivered. He stopped laughing and looked at Yi and Wu with an expressionless face. Agaras always showed his emotions to Yi and Wu, whether it was obsession or lunacy, but now, he looked like an emotionless doll. Open hollow corner bracket do you know what that means? His dry voice made chills run down the backs of the other envoys. However, Yi and Wu just nodded calmly. I do. Open hollow corner bracket no, you don't. I do. Open hollow corner bracket no. You don't. Agar's face twisted. Open hollow corner bracket the fruit of evil can only be created by our society after many sacrifices. It contains enough absolute evil to create a demon king and opposes the fruit of good. But you want this ridiculous artifact despite knowing that. Swish. Are you serious? Agar's demonic energy gathered together into the form of a crushed beast. It was his power, Wicked Devil, which Yi and Wu had also used. Wicked Devil growled at him. The fruit of good and the fruit of evil were items that the groups which symbolized absolute good and absolute evil needed a lot of resources and time to create. One bite of one of the fruits would bestow immortality and divinity, and eating the entire fruit would make one a superior divine being. Consuming both the fruits would produce a result even beyond that. It was like a clump of the laws of causality. The fruits had been only created a few times during the war between Malak and L'Infernal, which had gone on for nearly as long as the history of the universe. The two beings couldn't believe that Yi and Wu had so confidently requested it. He was essentially implying that he wanted to take everything Malak and L'Infernal had for himself. However, sparks suddenly flew, and sword thunder tore Wicked Devil apart. Crackle, rumble. Agaras stiffened. He knew Yi and Wu had become stronger, but he didn't know Yi and Wu would be able to tear his power apart so quickly. Perhaps it was possible Yi and Wu was already on his level. Yi and Wu snorted, arms still crossed. So much talk. Open hollow corner bracket what? That's for you guys to take care of. It's not my business, is it? Agaras was dumbfounded. Work like dogs if I tell you to. If you don't want to, fuck off. I won't force anyone. Yi and Wu raised a corner of his mouth. And I'll review my alliance with L'Infernal again. You guys are the ones who wanted to break it off first anyway, right? It's not my responsibility if it's cancelled. Agar is content to be speechless. What are you doing? Aren't you going? Yian-Wu raised his chin. Agaras looked at him wordlessly and looked up. L'Infernal was in an uproar. The demons of demonic society less than L'Infernal greater than are protesting. The demons of less than L'Infernal greater than grind their teeth at you. A few demons ask whether they need to honor the alliance considering this treatment. Ball silently watches you. Yian-Wu's threat was astonishing to the prideful creatures. However, Agaras tells the demons of less than L'Infernal greater than to shut up. Many demons close their mouths. A few demons protest timidly to Agaras. Agaras narrows his eyes. The East Demon Army is on the move. The resistance has been suppressed. After Agaras quieted the demons, he turned back to Yian-Wu. His blazing eyes were full of madness. Open hollow corner bracket, and if we make the fruits of good and evil, will you give us the stone then? Of course not. Don't think that you can pay for the stone with just a couple of fruits of good and evil. I already said this isn't a negotiation. Many envoys familiar with Agar's reputation quickly prepared to activate their powers. They believed that no matter how much Agaras wanted Yian-Wu, he wouldn't put up with this much humiliation. He wasn't called Agaras of madness for nothing. They could guarantee L'Infernal would probably try to rip Yian-Wu's head off. Even though Ball hadn't said anything yet, it seemed certain that the alliance would be terminated. Open hollow corner bracket, haha. Ha ha ha, but Agaras burst out into laughter again. Agaras has temporarily left less than L'Infernal greater than. The East Demon Army follows Agaras and declares a collective breakaway. Open hollow corner bracket N, no way. Open hollow corner bracket H, he left L'Infernal. The Grand Duke of the East. Agar's decision to temporarily break ties with L'Infernal left the envoys stunned. Aside from Ball, he was one of the greatest demons of L'Infernal. His subordinates probably made up 40% of the society, but now they were leaving together. It was a declaration that he would create a new society and walk an independent path. Open hollow corner bracket, you're so amusing. Agaras snickered, rubbing his lips with his thumb. Open hollow corner bracket, so amusing close hollow corner bracket. He fixed his eyes on Yian-Wu. They were filled with desire, madness, and obsession. He looked as though he would like to take Yian-Wu immediately. Who in the world would dare threaten him like this? He probably would have eaten the soul of the idiot who tried, but Yian-Wu's threat didn't displease him. Open hollow corner bracket, I'll give you the fruit of evil. We were about to create some anyway. Yian-Wu didn't miss the implication of Agar's words. He was about to. Yian-Wu realized how Agaras was planning to obtain the fruit, and he grinned. It was a ridiculous method, but the fastest and most certain. More importantly, the fruit of good can be made the same way, too. Is he planning on making the fruit of good and evil here? Yian-Wu clucked his tongue at Agar's devious scheme. Although it seemed like Agar's departure from L'Infernal was an impulsive act, Yian-Wu could see it had been carefully planned ahead of time. Ball probably had some input, as well. Open hollow corner bracket, crazy bastards. However, it clearly didn't seem that way to Gabriel because she looked from Agaras to Yian-Wu with an appalled expression. It seemed crazy to her that Yian-Wu could ask for the fruit as though it were an apple growing in their backyard, and it was just as crazy that Agaras agreed to give it. Her free spirit often resulted in nagging from the seraphs and scoldings from Metatron, but these two were even more impulsive. Agaras had left his society over something so simple. Even though it was temporary, she didn't understand. To gods and demons, societies weren't simply affiliations. They were a source of protection from external threats and allowed them to maintain the legends that made up their existences. It was impossible to abandon a society. Even if demons were selfish, it wasn't something that happened. They didn't have to be loyal to their society, but there were certain lines that they couldn't cross, although it was true that some beings wandered alone like Saranunos and Vimalasitra, who left his society recently. However, those two were known to have surpassed the limits of transcendence, gods, and demons. Agaras and Yian-Wu were nothing like them. It seemed to Gabriel that both Yian-Wu, who ordered the gods and demons around like slaves, and Agaras, who acted as he wished, would meet their downfall soon. She spread her hundreds of white wings open. Metatron had ordered her to come down, but she felt like she'd go crazy as well if she stayed any longer. She didn't know what her punishment would be, but she'd rather be stuck in Eden for even 200 years. Open hollow corner bracket, where are you going? Agaras asked the floating Gabriel with a twisted smile. His sharp canines glistened. Open hollow corner bracket, you guys can make that fruit of good and evil or whatever on your own. We don't have any fruits of good to give to you, and we have no plans to create them. Open hollow corner bracket. What makes you think you don't have them? Open hollow corner bracket. What? Gabriel frowned, not understanding Agorist. Swish. Suddenly, black demonic energy soared up from the ground and created hundreds of columns that trapped Gabriel. Open hollow corner bracket. Hoof. Gabriel flapped her wings in surprise. Rainbow-colored light flashed, breaking the demonic energy columns. Open hollow corner bracket. What are you? Just as she was about to protest, the broken pieces of demonic energy joined back together like a spider web and sent out tentacles to imprison her. This time, someone else had joined the fray. Clatter. Emptiness appeared in the air and black chains tumbled out of them. Yi and Wu smiled coldly at her. Open hollow corner bracket. You psychos. She realized that they were trying to capture her and frowned. Gabriel released as much of her powers as she could. Open angle bracket. His hero. Close angle bracket. Open angle bracket. Month of Aquarius. Close angle bracket. Open angle bracket. Water of the first month. Close angle bracket. Rainbow-colored light turned into waves of water that gushed like a tsunami as sharp blades poured down like rain. The sky shook as they cut space itself, leaving several tears. Her extraordinary strength befitted her role as one of the greatest angels of Malak, but unfortunately, she was facing the second most powerful figure of L'Infernal and the successor of the Black King, who put Malak on guard. There were also dozens of envoys who saw it as their chance to eliminate more competition. Open hollow corner bracket. Ack. In the end, Gabriel's powers were destroyed before she could even do anything, and a storm of demonic energy ripped her wings apart. The white wings were either red with blood or black with demonic energy. Clatter. The black chains pierced through her shoulders and calves, wrapping around her entire body. No matter how much she resisted, the divine iron absorbed her holy power. Open hollow corner bracket. If you lack absolute good to create the fruit of good, you can just collect enough nutrients for it. Agorist chuckled at Gabriel, who was floating in the air. She looked like a saint nailed on a cross. Open hollow corner bracket. Since you're so bothersome, it looks like things worked out well. Agorist had a refreshed face as if all his worries had gone. Open hollow corner bracket. Do you think you'll get away with this? Gabriel shouted at Agorist and Yi and Wu, who watched her silently. She had been punishing evil for a long time already, and she was confident she hadn't been defeated. She knew that Malak would soon move to punish them. Absolute good against absolute evil, the Armageddon they were postponing would finally happen, and because of Agorist's wicked greed, the order of the heavenly world would be crushed. Open hollow corner bracket. I think we will close hollow corner bracket. However, Agorist's twisted smile didn't leave his face. Gabriel's eyes widened. Open hollow corner bracket. What? The godly society less than Malak greater than has banished Gabriel. From this point on, Gabriel is unaffiliated with any group. Open hollow corner bracket. Metatron. Gabriel called the name of the scribe she respected, thinking that there was something wrong with her eyes. However, the message that had popped up was accurate. Metatron looks at Gabriel with an indifferent expression. Open hollow corner bracket. WI. Metatron looks at Gabriel with an indifferent expression. Open hollow corner bracket. No way. There was only one question in Gabriel's mind, why? Agorist gave her the answer. Open hollow corner bracket. Ha ha ha. Do you still not understand? I don't know if you're naive or dumb. No, you must be dumb. You were a sacrifice from the beginning. Do you think that sly snake didn't know what ## wanted? Gabriel was speechless. Open hollow corner bracket. You've been abandoned by the society you trusted so much. You are nothing more than a chess piece. Close hollow corner bracket. Open hollow corner bracket. That's not true. Open hollow corner bracket. Is it a small sacrifice for the greater good? You angels amuse me each time I encounter you. Agorist licked his lips like a cat. His movements were smooth and alluring. Metatron glares at Agorist with a displeased face. Open hollow corner bracket. Anyway. He smirked. Open hollow corner bracket. Goodbye. Open hollow corner bracket. No. Gabriel cried out desperately, but the chains binding her grew tighter. Crack. Both Gabriel's body and soul were crushed entirely. The laws of causality that supported her incarnation had disappeared after Malak banished her, and after her true body and incarnation were forcibly merged, her existence grew precarious. She couldn't even scream or cry. Open hollow corner bracket. What a nice sound. Ha ha ha. Even the faces of the envoys who helped capture Gabriel had turned stiff. A couple of them turned away, unable to continue watching. They had fought in countless battles, but it was their first time to see such a pointless annihilation or death. All gods of death smile. All demons of death nod. Only floating feathers and a white orb remained of Gabriel. Yi and Wu pulled the chains to bring the orb to himself. It was the fruit of good. Open hollow corner bracket and this. Agaras tossed a black orb to him. Open hollow corner bracket. It's the master of this place called Samagina that my army just annexed. Samagina was the location that Grand Marquis Gamagen, ranked 4th in L'Infernal, ruled. Open hollow corner bracket. He was acting up recently and grew annoying. It was a relief to get rid of him. Yi and Wu clucked his tongue. As expected, Agaras and the East Demon Army had withdrawn with balls and spoken permission. However, since he'd managed to obtain high-quality fruits of good and evil from Gabriel and Gamagen, he was satisfied. Things are working out better than I hoped. Yi and Wu smiled with pleasure and combined the two fruits. As they merged, they turned into a red apple. The fruit of good and evil has been created. Ha! Ha! Nohite was exhausted. His head was spinning from fatigue. How did things end up like this? Everything had been ordinary just a few days ago. He'd run an errand to bring food to Valdebek, skipping over excitedly to find out what story Valdebek would tell him that day. He appreciated Valdebek, who was the only visitor in this world, apart from the otherworld gods who roamed around the sky on occasion. Everything about Valdebek was interesting to Nohite, who grew up without any friends. Nohite had always been frustrated with the village elders, who didn't seem to have any thoughts of leaving this barren world. It was why he was the first to open up to Valdebek when all the village people were wary of him. He also became Valdebek's closest friend. Valdebek was affectionate to Nohite as well. The child reminded him of the little brother he'd left behind in his hometown. Whenever Nohite visited, Valdebek told him exciting tales of climbing the tower, as well as tales of memorable events from the tower's history that Cha Jungwoo had told him. Nohite's eyes always sparkled when he listened to the legends of spectacular heroes. His heart beat faster as if he were witnessing everything in person, and his hands were sweaty as he clenched them. Whenever Valdebek reached the part where the hero won, they would shout in exhilaration together. Whenever the hero faced despair, tears dripped down his eyes. Nohite wanted to be that kind of hero, too. He wanted to be someone who rose above numerous trials and difficulties. A world filled with the bonds of friendship, loyalty of comrades, and true love, it was like a fantasy. One day, Nohite would leave this depressing world to climb to the places that Valdebek called stages. The person Nohite respected the most was someone named Heaven Wing, who had been just like Nohite. Heaven Wing rose to the peak of the tower with nothing else but faith in himself. Although he'd fallen at the end, betrayed by countless people, that was why Nohite liked him the most. Nohite wanted to fulfill Heaven Wing's dream on his behalf. But Heaven Wing is here. He met someone who looked exactly like Valdebek's descriptions of Heaven Wing. Of course, it was the first time he'd ever seen a human, so he couldn't accurately distinguish human features, but he had a strong impression that the man really was Heaven Wing. But it's a demon. Heaven Wing disappeared after leaving a demon behind. The man left with Valdebek after leaving something scary behind. Open corner bracket. Hey, get to it. Why are you so slow? What are you doing? Get up and run. Every time the eyes of the undead entity who was as hulking as the half-giants flashed, Nohite felt chills run down his back. He had gotten goosebumps when he saw Valdebek train, but this undead entity was beyond Valdebek. Was Valdebek weak, or was this undead just too strong? It was hard for Nohite to make a comparison as he didn't know how strong people in the outside world were, but since Valdebek managed to defeat the otherworld gods, he knew that Valdebek definitely wasn't weak. Then how strong was this undead entity? And who was the black-coated man who commanded him, the man who resembled Heaven Wing? Is he like the Crawling Chaos? The Crawling Chaos was an entity of absolute power to Nohite, so that was all he could think of. This person had offered to train their tribe, and it was a rare opportunity that their tribe would likely never see again. There was finally a way to escape being treated like cattle. As Nohite dreamed of leaving, his only thought was to grab onto the opportunity. However, when training began, he realized how unrealistic he'd been. The training was extremely difficult. Did all the people who climbed the stages have such grueling lives? It was incredible. He was embarrassed that he used to think he could be a shining sun like Heaven Wing someday. The undead Shannon pushed the villagers to their limits. He made them run, lift their swords, and forced them to spar all day. There was no exception, elders and children were included. Naturally, the villagers soon lost interest. They had no motivation since, unlike Nohite who wanted to leave, they were already used to their routines. They lived in poverty and destitution, but it was normal to them. The idea of fighting the otherworld gods and being freed from the crawling chaos only incited fear in them. They didn't show much passion in training and even saw it in a negative light. Some even said these outsiders only ruined the peace of the village. This attitude was why Valdebek had given up training them. However, Shannon just kicked their butts and forced them to train, not caring about their complaints. Open corner bracket faster, faster. Okay. Listening to Shannon's terrifying voice, No-Height gritted his teeth. His legs trembled, but he forced himself to move. He wanted to become as strong as Shannon. Hardening his resolve once again, he ran. Open corner bracket master. There was no reply. Open corner bracket master. There was only silence. Open corner bracket arg. You should answer if someone talks to you. You're probably just going to complain about how impossible your task is. Open corner bracket T true, but then I'm going to cut off the connection. Open corner bracket that's not it. Let me finish. Shannon complained every hour or so that it was impossible and that it was his first time seeing bastards with this kind of attitude. He tried to convince Yi and Wu to turn them into spirit Gwai instead. The half-giants showed no inclination of improving. In fact, they were becoming worse. Half of them acted like they didn't care what Shannon made them do anymore. In their eyes, dying from exhaustion or dying like cattle was the same. The otherworld gods were like a fortress that could never be breached, and their master, the crawling chaos, was the sky itself, unreachable. Breaking the sky and escaping. It was impossible. The half-giants were pessimistic about everything and forcing them to train didn't have any effect. Shannon was becoming tired as well. As long as the half-giants had a defeatist mentality, they'd never change. What is it you want to say? I'm busy, so if it's nothing, I'll listen to it next time. Open corner bracket I'm asking you in all seriousness. Do you really think they can change? Yi and Wu didn't reply. Open corner bracket I know the scenario quest is important and resurrecting the giant race will be useful in catching Alpharon. I also get you'll be able to obtain more parts of the revelations and use the guys in the heavenly world. I know there are a lot of benefits, but do you really think the answer lies in them? You'll be destroying whatever peace they have because of your greed. Shannon's voice was serious. Although he complained that it was impossible to train them, he never said he wouldn't do it. No matter how he grumbled and griped, he always followed his master's orders. If he was asking like this, it meant he had thought it over deeply. It was possible Shannon was right. Unlike Yi and Wu and Valdebek, whose comprehension had expanded from seeing many worlds, the half-giants had only ever lived in this place. Yi and Wu's requests seemed little more than tyranny. They might even think it was a trick to finally end their race for once and for all. Yi and Wu felt like he needed to reply seriously this time. Shannon. Open corner bracket what? Gods don't abandon their followers. Open corner bracket what? Shannon seemed a bit taken aback. He hadn't expected a response like this. They said they'd serve me as my followers, and I said I'd save them. As their god, I need to fulfill my role and lead them to hope. That's what I have to do. Shannon was speechless. Of course, they might not see hope now, but I believe that they'll be able to see what I see in the near future. That will become their hope. Work at it a bit longer. Followers who could see what their gods saw. Shannon was speechless for a while. He repeated Yi and Wu's words in his head. From what he'd seen so far, the relationship between gods and their followers was more transactional. It was like an exchange. Gods received the faith of their followers and the followers received an equal amount of strength. The followers who didn't receive anything worked hard to be noticed by the gods. That was how it had been for Shannon in Red Dragon, when he'd struggled to stand out to the 81 Oculus. After meeting Yi and Wu, he saw new worlds, and his thinking began to change because they were looking through the same eyes. Yi and Wu was planning on doing this with his followers as well. Shannon cleared his thoughts and spoke again. Open corner bracket master. Why, are you moved? Sensing Shannon's wavering emotions, Yi and Wu grinned. Shannon spoke in a solemn voice. Open corner bracket don't you think you're being a pushover too? I'm cutting it off. Open corner bracket ack. Yi and Wu blocked his connection with Shannon. He could never guess the direction Shannon would take. It was a wonder that he was still the same even after training for 1,000 years. Yi and Wu clucked his tongue and looked down when he felt a gaze from below. A puppy panted as it furiously wagged its tail. Did you find it? Woof. Then, let's go. Woof. Woof. The puppy nodded and began to run forward. Yi and Wu tsked as he followed the puppy. It's unbelievable that it's Fenrir, who has swallowed gods and eaten heroes. The strongest wolf in Niflheim, Fenrir, had been in its wolf form when it first arrived as an envoy. Its howls had shaken the atmosphere then, but that seemed far away now. The envoys had reduced their forms to minimize how much of the laws of causality they used in order to maintain their incarnations. Fenrir had chosen to take the form of a puppy. It had really become a dog after what Yi and Wu said. Yi and Wu was incredulous, but that was how important the revelations were to them. After that, Yi and Wu gave a single command to the envoys: find all the stories and records related to the giant race from each society. And anything related to the sites on this stage. The envoys moved busily, scanning through their society's records to find anything related to the giant race and using their powers to search for any hidden sites. They partly wanted to get on Yi and Wu's good side, but also partly because they'd seen what happened to the Archangel Gabriel. They didn't want to be used like that. Yi and Wu could see fear start to enter their eyes. The information they found allowed Yi and Wu to learn more details about the secrets and culture of the giant race. The societies that had once clashed with the giant race provided especially useful information, and even Valdebik learned more of his history. Yi and Wu explored the hidden sites using the gods and demons, and he finally managed to reach the last site on the stage. "Why are you so late? I've been waiting for you." At the entrance of the last site, a young child about 5 years old, younger than Sesha, pouted as he complained. The child looked adorable and pretty to the point that it was hard to tell whether he was a girl or a boy. However, it was a little awkward for Yi and Wu since the child was Agaras. The demon that smiled as he ripped Gabriel apart had chosen a form that made Yi and Wu feel like sighing. From the puppy Fenrir to the child Agaras. Yi and Wu ignored his question and was about to walk past him when Agaras glowered at Fenrir, who was rubbing itself against Yi and Wu's legs. "What's that dog? Why is it with you?" Agaras was ready to fight Fenrir any moment. His eyes blazed with fury, as if he were trying to frighten Fenrir away from his possession. However, Fenrir dropped his cute manner and bared his teeth at Agaras with a loud bark. "Woof. What is it, dog? Is there something you want to say?" "Woof, woof, it's mine, scram, woof, woof, what, I'm delusional, a mere dog like you dares. Woof, woof, HMPH, what's wrong with calling a dog, dog? Woof, shut up, I'm not a dog like you. Woof, woof." Although a squabble between a 5-year-old child and a puppy appeared cute on the surface, the air around them was on the verge of exploding. Fenrir was a great demon who could go toe-to-toe with Agaras, and they were both on equal footing. However, neither made the first move because Yi and Wu had warned the envoys that if any of them were too noisy and disturbed his investigation, he would eliminate them immediately. Agaras and Fenrir could only bicker with each other, but that didn't mean the societies behind them remained unmoved. The demonic society less than L'Infernal greater than expresses hostility towards the demonic society less than Niflheim greater than. The demonic society less than Niflheim greater than sends a strong warning to the demonic society less than L'Infernal greater than. Ball sighs deeply. Loki clucks his tongue in disgust. Agaras and the East Demon Army were back in L'Infernal, and the messages between the societies flew. Yi and Wu didn't interfere that much since the tensions between societies might lead to greater conflict. For better or for worse, the two leaders didn't seem interested in a battle. However, the other societies were also beginning to stir. The Godly Society less than Asgard greater than protests against you. The Godly Society less than Olympus greater than attempts to contact the Godly Society less than Asgard greater than. The Godly Society less than Diva greater than warns the societies around it. The Godly Society less than Dilmun greater than declares it will close off some territories temporarily. The Demonic Society less than Jia sect greater than has declared martial law and is carefully observing the less than Chan sect greater than. Even the societies who had good relationships with each other were watching each other warily in case someone snatched the revelations. As time went by, the distrust among them increased. It was easier for Yi and Wu if the heavenly world was fragmented, so he just watched, inciting quarrels between them when he could, like not interrupting Agaras and Fenrir. As long as they don't destroy the sites. Yi and Wu smirked and entered the site, where smaller and younger envoys waited for him with bright eyes. "All the traps inside have been deactivated. As you ordered, we didn't enter the last section. Unlike the other places, this one took some effort to clear. There's definitely a great secret here. We had to use a significant amount of our powers and the laws of causality. Please let us see just a corner. Please." They spoke using their physical voices instead of their true ones. Their true voices could bind the souls of their opponents, but it didn't work on Yi and Wu, so they tried to minimize using the laws of causality as much as they could. Their requests were simple. They wanted Yi and Wu to share any discoveries he made at the sites with them. As he searched, the envoys deactivated traps or cleared the land. However, they weren't allowed to enter the final section that contained the stone related to the revelations. If they entered by accident, they had to leave without examining the stone. The envoys had faithfully followed the rules, not wishing to be eliminated like Asgard because of greed. Even if they were tempted to take a peek, there were too many other envoys watching, and it was too risky. With everyone being suspicious of each other, what could they do? Besides, they didn't know how to extract the revelations from the stone, anyway. They could only hope that Yianwu would take pity on them if they followed his orders. However, as always, he didn't reply to their entreaties. The envoys were about to sigh, thinking that they had to give up again, when Yianwu spoke up. "Follow me if you will." It was unexpected. Really? Finally, hope seeped into their faces. "If you can handle the consequences, I'll step back." "Me, too." They retreated at his words. They weren't too stupid to understand what the consequences were. Yianwu smirked as he passed by them. The envoys were angry, but they had to restrain their tempers and grit their teeth. If there was a position that ruled over the domains of bad temperaments and power tripping, Yianwu would be perfect for it. They swore to themselves that when everything was over, they would force Yianwu and Arthea into ruin. However, Yianwu just scoffed, as if he could read their minds. Good relations between him and the heavenly world had never been possible from the start. The heavenly world didn't make it explicit, but it was clear that they saw him as a pawn. He was only mirroring their own actions. What was so wrong about that? He could use them for many things as long as he had the upper hand. As he entered the depths of the site through an underground path, Metatron and Malik followed him closely. The godly society less than Malik greater than observes you persistently. Metatron watches you solemnly. They had been like this ever since they sacrificed Gabriel. They were pressuring him into giving them the revelations since they had given him the fruit of good. It was clear they wouldn't let him off easily. I definitely didn't expect they'd give up Gabriel like that. That was the part Yianwu still didn't understand. Azrael was already a great loss, but losing Gabriel greatly damaged their forces. He didn't know the details, but he was certain that there must have been many opinions in Malik about this. The fact that they had willingly given Gabriel up could only mean one thing: something's rushing them to make a move. They desperately need the revelations. It was the same situation when it came to L'Infernal. They had given up Gaimajin, who had been ranked 4th in their society. Yianwu didn't know what Malik and L'Infernal had said about the Book of Enoch, a book of prophecies, and L'Megadon, a grimoire. Those were the names that the societies called specific sections of the revelations. The difference was that the revelations contained the truth of the entire universe, but the Book of Enoch and L'Megadon had the details of the rise and fall of each society. In other words, it was the information they needed most from the revelations. The fact that they needed it so much meant that something urgent was happening. Did the war with Alpharon grow so bad that they're feeling threatened? Or are they planning something else? Yianwu didn't know what was going on, but he didn't think the situation was necessarily bad. There were still a lot of things he could take from the societies. He soon reached a large wall. "You have arrived at the last site of the giant race. Currently collected stones, 14/15. It seemed like a grave for a mighty being. The stone walls had divine murals painted on them, and there was also a room filled with numerous weapons of the giants that were at least at S rank. Yianwu guessed it was a royal tomb or at least of a giant who had a high position. However, considering that the gods and demons didn't recognize the tomb, it likely didn't belong to a king. Once he pulled out the stone, the third scenario quest would be over. Boo! When Yianwu shouted, black clouds whirled around, and Boo silently appeared with a bow. Boo had also gone through many changes. Arch-Lich. Position. Familiar. Description. He is a creature who sought death, reached it, and appeared once more as a being who has defied death. He is a philosopher who represents death itself. As your strongest familiar, faithful advisor, and great conqueror, he will spread your will throughout the land. Special note. Completed the divine position of defeat and reached the divine position of pale. Boo had grown more than 2 meters tall. Although he was smaller than Shannon, his aura was stronger, and he exuded a dangerous scent, as though he were death itself. It was probably because he had reached the highest position one could reach after dying, Arch-Lich. Yianwu was sure that Boo had reached the peak he had as Faust or even surpassed it. The words, divine position, stood out. Pale was another word for death, so it meant Boo had gained holiness, which was the first step towards exuviation and transcendence. He could now go toe-to-toe with Yi and Wu, but as in the past, he knelt and bowed. Open corner bracket greetings master. His loyalty to Yi and Wu was still strong. In fact, his attitude was more respectful than before. He looked like a zealot who was meeting the god he served. Just as Yi and Wu had seen the holiness Bu gained, Bu saw Yi and Wu grow closer to darkness. Strongest familiar and faithful advisor, Yi and Wu thought there was no better description for Bu than that. Have you recovered some of your memories? Open corner bracket thanks to your grace I can remember the entirety of my past life, however my past life has nothing to do with me, I am just a familiar who serves you. After Bu awakened at the first sight, he had been busy recovering his memories and organizing his strength, which was why he couldn't show himself until this moment. He had finally finished his metamorphosis and become a full arch-lich. Yi and Wu smiled at him. He was satisfied with Bu's growth and pleased to see that Bu drew a clear line between his past and current life. Do you know where we are? Bu scanned the room and nodded. Open corner bracket yes master. Clack. Clack. His jaws made noise when he spoke. Open corner bracket it's not just this place, I've visited this hidden stage in my past life to search for the crawling chaos. When Yi and Wu first arrived at the sites, Faust's memories helped Bu advise Yi and Wu to combine the stones. Open corner bracket at the time I was chasing after darkness, so I attempted to find the answer within the crawling chaos, but he did not give me an answer. I came to this place to obtain the emerald tablet. Yi and Wu didn't miss the strong emotions of joy and remorse in Bu's eyes as he looked around. These were emotions that only those who had been forced to wait a long time before reaching their goal could feel. It was also the sadness of someone who'd realized that he'd been searching for an item in the wrong location. The emerald tablet, here, open corner bracket yes, after learning the giant race was enslaved by the crawling chaos, I explored their sites. It seemed he had obtained the stones of the emerald tablet here and returned to the stages to create a dungeon where he could experiment on it. That was where Viera Dune and Walpurgisnacht found it. Then, you mean there aren't any stone tablets left? Bu shook his head. Open corner bracket at the time I was ignorant and didn't know the value of the stone tablets. I could only uncover a few of them. There are more tablets remaining. If they are combined they will be of great assistance to you, but, Yi and Wu cocked his head. Open corner bracket if you take these stone tablets the crawling chaos will find out you're here. Yi and Wu contemplated for a moment. For some reason, the crawling chaos hadn't appeared even when the envoys from the heavenly world arrived, which was why Yi and Wu could explore the sites so quickly. However, once he dug the stone up, the site would release a wave of magic power, and the crawling chaos would realize he was here. If the crawling chaos caught on now, it might cause a setback to their plans since the half-giants weren't completely trained yet. However, he eventually nodded. It's fine, go ahead. He couldn't avoid a fight with the crawling chaos. There would be no difference if it came sooner or later. Open corner bracket as you command. Bu raised his hands with delight and began to recite a spell. Rumble. The tomb quaked. You have finished exploring the final site. You have completed the scenario quest Proof of the King III. All the collected stones have been combined into one. You have obtained the artifact, Book of the Black King. Space ripped open and a great wave of thoughts descended on Yi and Wu. You, again. Nash. Those sons of bitches. Did they have no dignity as transcendents? A distance away from the last site, envoys from godly societies were grouped together, waiting for Yi and Wu. They were all fighting each other over the revelations, but they were still tied together because they were all gods. All the godly envoys were displeased. They had always been worshipped and admired, so it hurt their pride to be treated like this. It was particularly humiliating that they were helping the giants, who were descendants of their former enemies. Just as the relationship between the demons and dragons had been bad from the beginning of the universe, the same could be said for the relationship between the gods and the giants. In the heavenly world, there were still gods who hated the giants more than they did demons. If not for the revelations, and more urgently, the upcoming battle with Alpharon, this wouldn't have been necessary. They would have retreated and waited for Yi and Wu to experience a weak moment. However, since time was short, they had to work with Yi and Wu. The representatives of absolute good and evil, Malik and L'Infernal, especially needed the revelations, and it was logical that they would sacrifice Gabriel and Gaimajin. However, although the gods obeyed Yi and Wu, their resentment of him only grew, not realizing that they had their own part in this situation. They already forgot that they had tried to use Yi and Wu as their pawn first. Gods were beings who were meant to rule over all things. They couldn't have emotions like regret, shame, or remorse. They believed they were the center of the universe, and the world moved according to their will. From their perspective, Fenrir, who wagged his tail at Yi and Wu, and Agaris, who didn't hide his obsession with Yi and Wu, were transcendents who had abandoned their honor. They weren't the only ones. Jia sect's Wang Lingguan continued to show goodwill towards Yi and Wu, and the demonic societies were all attempting to build good relations with him. Did they all plan on being used like dogs? Erlang, what do you think? The godly envoys all looked at a beautiful man in their center who was sitting in a lotus position with shut eyes. It was Chan sect's Erlang Shen. He slowly opened his eyes and the godly envoys watched the light radiating from him with wonder. It was easy to see how he had become one of the 3 leaders of the Chan sect. Chan sect was one of the 5 great godly societies, along with Malak, Asgard, Deva, and Olympus. After their former leader, the Yellow Emperor, had fallen asleep on the 3 god mountains from some unknown illness, 3 leaders ruled in his stead, Erlang Shen, Prince Nezha, and Lei Junzi. Their fame had spread throughout the heavenly world. It was said they were the greatest beings, who were powerful, wise, and noble. In fact, the Chan sect had only grown stronger after the 3 leaders had taken the Yellow Emperor's place. In particular, they possessed the amazing legend of once having stood against the despised heavenly demon, who was the common enemy of all gods and demons. All the godly envoys naturally gathered around Erlang Shen when he arrived. Erlang Shen accepted their actions with grace, as if it were only natural. However, he hadn't spoken a word to Yi and Wu since arriving. He didn't try to flatter Yi and Wu like the others or attempt to approach him. He only observed Yi and Wu with an impassive face. The envoys who'd known Erlang Shen for a long time knew this meant that he was judging strengths and weaknesses of his enemy. They were now asking to see if he had learned anything useful. But once again, Erlang Shen had no reply. The other godly envoys thumped their chests in frustration. It would have been good if he had said something. It wasn't good for them to stay in the hidden stage of the lower world for a long time. The more time they spent there, the more laws of causality their societies would have to pay. It would also be a huge annoyance if the owner of this place, the Crawling Chaos, noticed them. We've been lucky so far, but if the Crawling Chaos realizes we're here, it'll be dangerous. He's a monster. Nothing good will come from associating with him. It was impossible for them to fight the Crawling Chaos unless a progenitor or creator god stepped up to help. He could swallow not just their incarnations, but also the true bodies were still in the heavenly world. Considering that they were in his holy territory, just being here was like an act of suicide. If they didn't enjoy a high level in their societies, they would have gone crazy or been swallowed up already. None of the gods wanted to be here. They wanted to leave as soon as possible, and Yi and Wu's tyrannical commands were frustrating to them. Just then, the last site Yi and Wu entered began to shake. The gods and demons all turned to it with surprise since it was the first time for a phenomenon like this to occur. Erlang Shen opened his mouth for the first time. He's here. A great wave of magic power lashed around them. The holy power within it made the envoys straighten their backs. The creature they feared to encounter was projecting his will to their location. The Crawling Chaos. You, again. Yi and Wu smirked at the words. He could feel the Crawling Chaos carefully examining him through the darkness. Unlike the last time they met, the Crawling Chaos probably couldn't read him easily since he'd grown incomparably stronger. The Philosopher's Stone and Dragon Heart activated to protect his body. Still he's strong, I can feel it in my nerves. Yi and Wu narrowed his eyes at the prickly feeling at his fingertips. Although he had progressed greatly, the holy power of the Crawling Chaos still overwhelmed him. How strong was he? The more Yi and Wu learned, the greater the Crawling Chaos seemed. But he doesn't seem so far away now. Back then, the Crawling Chaos had seemed like a wide ocean he could never cross, but now, he was more like a large river. Besides, his true body seemed to be located some distance away, and only one part of him was watching Yi and Wu at the moment. Was the tower blocking him from sending his true body even though this was his holy territory? Yi and Wu could feel the Crawling Chaos, thoughts reaching him and bouncing off. He could read emotions of displeasure and surprise from the being. The Crawling Chaos, thoughts suddenly became sharp as though he were glaring at something. Revelations. As expected, the Crawling Chaos knew precisely why Yi and Wu had become stronger. Some time ago, the wheel was spun back. Was that you? He was most likely speaking of the time that the heavenly demon had turned back 200 years of the universe. Yi and Wu clucked his tongue. The gods and demons hadn't mentioned anything, which meant they hadn't been able to feel it. However, the Crawling Chaos clearly had. Since it wasn't something he needed to hide, he didn't deny it. He cocked his head with a grin. So what if it was not something mortal? You don't get to decide whether I'm worthy or not of having the ability. That's for me to choose. I'm facing you today because I have something to say. Yi and Wu cut off the waves of thoughts coming from the crawling chaos. The being also stopped emitting them, as if he wanted to know what Yi and Wu wanted. Do you remember what I offered some time ago? Yi and Wu was speaking about his offer to help the crawling chaos in exchange for the original revelations. The crawling chaos had turned him down, saying the revelations couldn't be traded that way. Yi and Wu could tell that the crawling chaos possessed quite a large amount of the revelations. The giants only discovered a section of what he has. Apart from Valdebeach's hopes, Yi and Wu had other reasons to clash with the crawling chaos. The revelations contained the only path to darkness. I'll change that offer to a warning. Yi and Wu narrowed his eyes. From this moment on, I'm going to take over your territory and take my followers from you. Then, I'll take the revelations from you as part of the spoils of war. If he couldn't prevent the crawling chaos from noticing him, then he would declare war. Yi and Wu wanted to walk the path of a god, and he needed to move forward with confidence for his legend to shine. Prepare for your death and wait. The crawling chaos was silent for a moment. I shall wait. Then, he left. Was Yi and Wu only imagining that it felt like the crawling chaos had been grinning? However, Yi and Wu was sure of one thing. The war with the crawling chaos could no longer be turned back. I'm going to be busier. He needed to train the half-giants faster. The scenario quest Proof of the God and King IV has been created. Please check the details of the quest in your quest window. When Yi and Wu left the last site after his conversation with the crawling chaos, the godly envoys all dashed toward him, shouting, What have you done? Everyone had heard his conversation with the crawling chaos, and they were all astounded. They had been careful to avoid catching the crawling chaos attention, but Yi and Wu had suddenly declared war. Since they were helping him, they had no choice but to be involved as well. The godly society less than Diva greater than protests vehemently. The godly society less than Chan sect greater than says they cannot become involved in this war. The godly society less than Malik greater than awaits your statement. The other societies pressured him in the same way. But Yi and Wu just smiled crookedly. What are you? The envoys were flustered. Yi and Wu turned to them and the societies in the heavenly world. Didn't I already say it? You have to work like dogs if you want the revelations. This is only part of it. No one could reply. Participate in the war, then you can have the revelations. The envoys were furious. Was Yi and Wu being serious? The godly society less than Diva greater than expresses hostility towards you. The godly society less than Dilman greater than expresses hostility towards you. The godly society less than Memphis greater than expresses strong hostility towards you. The godly society less than Asgard greater than agrees with the societies that have expressed hostility. The godly society less than Olympus greater than looks at you coldly. It was a bolt from the blue for the societies. They were already busy preparing for war against Alpharon, and now, they were expected to battle for the independence of the descendants of their past enemies. Their first reaction was disgust. They could understand giving Yi and Wu all the records of the giant race they possessed, helping him discover the sites, and even using their powers to act as his hunting dogs. But this was too much. Open hollow corner bracket you dare to go this far because we let you off easily. Open hollow corner bracket you damned bastard. The most dissatisfied beings, Vayu of Diva and Sebek of Memphis, spoke in their true voices, baring their sharp teeth. Powerful winds blew with the movement of Vayu's hands, and an immense amount of vapor whirled around Sebek's body before hurtling towards Yi and Wu. Sebek was a high-level god who controlled Great Lakes. However, black-red sword thunder suddenly lashed at the whirlwind of winds and water and the incarnations of Vayu and Sebek beyond it. Vayu stepped back in surprise, but he couldn't completely escape sword thunder. He watched as his right arm was torn off. Sebek couldn't even scream as his body was split in half from his head to his legs. He disappeared with a dense, burning smell. The enraged godly envoys who had been about to charge at Yi and Wu stopped. Yi and Wu had reacted more aggressively than they expected. Sebek was a high-level god who represented Memphis, and he'd even been considered a superior god once. However, Yi and Wu had split a powerful entity like that with a single strike. Vayu gripped his right arm, which leaked with holy power, and bit his lower lip. The gap in power between them and Yi and Wu was evident from the clash. He hadn't been this powerful when he left the Chenggong library. It was impossibly fast progress, even if he had the domain of fight. Had he become stronger after obtaining the stones from the sites? Or had he been enlightened with something new after becoming the god of the half-giants? It was hard to tell, but one thing was for sure, they wouldn't be able to defeat Yi and Wu unless they used all their strength. Crackle, crackle, even after demonstrating so much power, Yi and Wu seemed fine. He growled at them, I already told you to fuck off if you're not happy. I don't plan to stop you from doing that. Every time black-red bolts sparked from his skin, the godly envoys felt chills going down their spines. And I think I should be the angry one here. Were you thinking of taking the entire stone tablet only after giving me a few records of the giant race and helping me explore the sites? You were just planning to sit there comfortably without risking anything. Two lines appeared over Yi and Wu and opened up. A gigantic inferno sight glared at them. Bu had opened his eyes. Open corner bracket, who dares disrespect master? The eyes of the envoys widened in shock as they saw an entity created from the concept of death standing in front of them. In the past, a player named Faust had almost reached exuviation and transcendence but hadn't been able to climb past Alpharon. But now, he was a huge threat now that he'd returned with the potential of darkness. Faust already seemed strong on his own, but Agariz and Fenrir walked over to stand next to him. Open hollow corner bracket, I see you're all having some fun here. The other demonic envoys who had taken a neutral stance and some anxious godly envoys moved to Yi and Wu's side, as well. The godly society less than Malik greater than declares it will stand on #S side. Malik, whom they thought would clash with Yi and Wu the most, was still on Yi and Wu's side. The three leaders of the godly society less than Chan sect greater than have voted unanimously to stand on player #S side. Their leader, Erlang Shen, was also standing with Yi and Wu. Only the ones who'd expressed hostility were in danger now. What are you going to do? You should go now if you don't want to stay. Didn't you want to avoid the war with the crawling chaos? Yi and Wu smirked at them. Open hollow corner bracket, damn it. As their fists trembled with fury, the hostile envoys had no choice but to surrender. After they were finished exploring the sites, they opened a portal to return to the village of the half-giants, where Shannon waited. There were fewer envoys this time, since many had opted to return to the heavenly world, unable to endure Yi and Wu's treatment. Ironically, Vayu, who had clashed against Yi and Wu, was still there. He followed Yi and Wu's orders silently with an impassive face. Open hollow corner bracket, aren't you pushing them too hard? Valdebik approached Yi and Wu and asked in concern. He'd been feeling nervous for the last few days because of the conflict between Yi and Wu and the envoys. At times, Yi and Wu was so cold and aloof that Valdebik wondered if it was all right to leave him be. Valdebik knew how narrow-minded and petty the gods were. They might try to harass Yi and Wu after everything was over. Open hollow corner bracket, what? Valdebik flinched as Yi and Wu looked at him without saying anything. Valdebik. Open hollow corner bracket, what? Why is your name Valdebik? Open hollow corner bracket, what kind of nonsense are you? The last king of the giant race was called Valdebik as well. I think your parents gave you that name hoping you'd become someone like him. Right. Valdebik was silent. Then you should take some pride in your name. You and I have the duty to resurrect the giant race, and for that, we need to have a specific mindset and attitude. We must be arrogant and full of self-belief. Valdebik pressed his lips together. Yi and Wu's words made his eyes tremble. We are equal to them. They may represent their societies, but we represent the giant race. You need to look down on them. If not, our future relationships with them will be messed up. Be wary of this. Valdebik clenched his fists. Ever since he'd met Yi and Wu, all his beliefs and assumptions had been crushed multiple times. He'd always thought of himself as a mortal who was inferior to gods and demons, and he felt that he'd put them on a pedestal. After organizing his thoughts, he nodded heavily. Open hollow corner bracket, I didn't think it through. Sorry. Yi and Wu grinned and nudged Valdebik with his shoulder. You don't have to make it complicated. This is only the beginning. He looked at the black book in his hand, the result of combining all the stones together, the Book of the Black King. Book of the Black King. Rank. Description. It is incomplete. Gather the remaining pieces. Special note. It is currently recreating the sections you've already seen in the past. Not Book of Enoch, or Lemegeddon, but Book of the Black King. The crawling chaos and the otherworld gods worshipped the Black King as an almighty being, and Faust had reached his peak with the knowledge he'd obtained from seeking the Black King. The heavenly demon had also said the book was outstanding. Since the giants had believed it would free them, it was possible they thought they would have an opportunity even after death. So, These revelations are. Yi and Wu's eyes darkened as he looked down at the book. As soon as Yi and Wu returned to the village, he immediately summoned Shannon and the half-giants. Open corner bracket. There's no solution for these things. Shannon crossed his arms as he complained. The half-giants didn't show any motivation and grew even more timid as time passed. He thought it was impossible to change them. Valdebic seemed to agree. He sighed as the half-giants looked at him with pleading eyes, hoping for salvation. On the other hand, the envoys had varied reactions. The godly envoys looked doubtful, wondering if the half-giants could really help them in battle, and they didn't hide their scornful attitudes. The demonic envoys seemed interested that the giant race still existed and were curious about Yi and Wu's plans of changing them. At a glance, it seemed like the demons were more open-minded than the gods, but that didn't mean they were sympathetic to the half-giants. They were just curious about the giants, nothing more, nothing less. They were observed out of amusement, and they didn't really believe that Yi and Wu would succeed. The half-giants felt their gazes and shrank back even more, unable to speak. Even the ones who planned on complaining and asking why Yi and Wu was making them suffer were silent. It was understandable. If they were players, they would have been less anxious since the envoys were only incarnations. But because the half-giants were still transcendent, they could see the envoys' true bodies. Yi and Wu looked into the eyes of each of the trembling half-giants. The half-giants flinched in surprise at the deep abyss in his eyes. Some of them paled, while others almost fainted. However, one of them tried to endure his gaze more than others. It's the child from Valdebic's cabin. The child was the same size as Yi and Wu, but still smaller than the other half-giants. Still, the determination in his eyes was evident to all. He even glowered back, as if he wouldn't lose to Yi and Wu. Yi and Wu grinned. Fortunately, although the giant race had fallen, not all of them had been ruined. Open hollow corner bracket. Starting from tomorrow, you will go to war. Yi and Wu began without any explanation. The half-giants couldn't help but feel shocked. They had only trained for a few days and that had only been for their stamina. They didn't know how to fight, and they hadn't even developed muscles yet. However, Yi and Wu was throwing them at the battlefield like that. It was like he was telling them to die. Their faces paled. However, no one was able to speak because of Yi and Wu's overwhelming aura. Speaking in a divine voice could carve one's words into an opponent's soul, and each word Yi and Wu spoke was like a spell that bound them. Open hollow corner bracket. You must be feeling wronged. You've been living here so peacefully, and I've come here all of a sudden to tell you to fight. A corner of Yi and Wu's mouth lifted, and it looked almost as though he were laughing at them. Open hollow corner bracket. But at this rate, you'll slowly die out because of the otherworld gods. It makes no difference if you die now or later. The aura around Yi and Wu began to shake. The half-giants felt their hearts shrink. It was hard to breathe. Tremble. Fear slowly crept up their bodies, but it was so extreme, they couldn't be sure if it was fear alone or something else. Open hollow corner bracket. So if you feel wronged, survive. Become stronger, and get revenge on me. Then, fear slowly turned into another emotion. Yi and Wu's channels bored into their souls. It was the line of connection that bound gods and their followers. Yi and Wu spoke in a solemn voice at the now enraptured half-giants. Open hollow corner bracket. Fight. That's all I can say to you. Whoosh. Open corner bracket. It's been a while since I last smelled the outside air. Open corner bracket. Why did the new king of the underworld call us this time? Open corner bracket. Well, we won't know until we hear his orders. He must have called us for a reason, so we'll soon find out. The three Cyclops brothers took deep breaths of fresh air. They hadn't been out in the world for a while. Since they were already dead, they didn't actually need to breathe, but old habits from when they were still alive were hard to break. The youngest, Argas, had grown up separate from his two older brothers. To escape from Tartarus, he'd followed Pluto's decision to become one of Yi and Wu's familiars and had been in a deep sleep within the shadows ever since. Thanks to Yi and Wu's power, the three Cyclops brothers could stay together even after death, and so they referred to Yi and Wu with honorifics. Yi and Wu was their benefactor and the successor of their previous master, Hades. They bowed their heads in his presence without a second thought. Moreover, since the brothers had a connection with Yi and Wu at all times, they understood just how powerful Yi and Wu had become. Yi and Wu's soul had grown so much that they wondered how a development like that could even be possible, especially when they had their doubts about the newly anointed successor of the Black King when they'd first been summoned. However, it seemed that Yi and Wu had already fully consumed the power of the throne of death and made it his own, so they guessed that he would soon be able to reach a position equal to that of Hades. Even in Olympus' long and illustrious history, very few had ever shown such remarkable growth. At most, they could only compare Yi and Wu's growth to that of Hercules, a hero who inherited the blood of Zeus. As a result, they had no choice but to acknowledge Yi and Wu with deep respect. The appearance of the giant Cyclops on one knee and bowing their heads in front of their master looked impressive. "I have a request for you all." The three were puzzled that the great king of the underworld was making a request. After all, they would follow it as though it were a command, and they blinked their big eyes in confusion. After hearing Yi and Wu's request, ah, damn it. We temporarily forgot what type of person our great king of the underworld truly is. Sir Shannon was right all along. The three Cyclops brothers muttered in dissatisfaction as they moved around busily. Yi and Wu had asked them to do something very simple yet physically demanding: build a fortress in the village where he was staying. He wanted to turn it into a base where his army could stay. The Cyclops brothers were not only accomplished blacksmiths, they also possessed the skills to make things beyond weapons and tools. They were also proficient in a variety of fields, such as civil engineering, bridge construction, land surveying, and all other related fields. The various holy territories that existed in Tartarus during their war with the Titan and giants were in fact structures that they had built long ago. Furthermore, the camps that Pluto set up whenever they went to battle were based on the blueprints created by the three Cyclops brothers. Yi and Wu understood how much strength and talent they had, so he immediately ordered the brothers to transform the half-giant village into a fortress. Yi and Wu planned to use this hidden stage as a sanctuary in the future, and so, he paid a tremendous amount of attention on where the base would be built. Carrying out Yi and Wu's orders was not difficult for the brothers because this was something they'd done their entire lives. They knew they would be contributing to the legend and mythology that the new king of the underworld was striving to achieve. The main issue was that the village was in terrible shape. Even a rural village would have been a better starting point. The brothers had grown up seeing refined marble buildings in prosperous, bustling cities, and they couldn't help being astonished by the chaotic, backwards, filthy, and crowded village. When they discovered who the founders of this village were, they couldn't help screaming in frustration. Are these people really the descendants of the infamous giant race? No matter how I look at it, they don't seem to be anything like the giants. Brontes, the eldest, said as he shook his head in disbelief. The giants were famous not only for being fearless invaders and battle fiends, but also for their logistical capability, engineering skills, and social structures that could support long, protracted wars. In other words, they had sophisticated supply chains and organizations, and their ability to wield the sword was matched by their ability to create. At one time, the three Cyclops brothers even went as far as to try and somehow get their hands on the giants' camp-building plans. The brothers could not believe that the giants' descendants had fallen to such an absurd level. The level of deterioration went beyond a simple decline, it was complete collapse. When the brothers realized that Yi and Wu was trying to become their god and was planning to resurrect the giant race, the first words that popped into their heads were, "Is he crazy?" Of course, it was impossible to express this, and so, the brothers took on their duties and began to execute their tasks one by one. Brontes concentrated on building the fortress, Starapus concentrated on building the base, and Argus concentrated on making weapons. Fortunately, there was no shortage of workers. As Yi and Wu grew more powerful, the brothers had also benefited, and they'd almost regained the level of power they had when they were alive. Additionally, Wu raised a large group of undead to help them, so they were able to proceed with their work relatively quickly. In addition, for some reason, the various gods and demons who had their noses squashed by Yi and Wu fell head over heels to offer him their best blessings and protection spells for the fortress. However, all this help did not keep the brothers from sighing and complaining. Of course, they did not sigh or complain in front of Yi and Wu since the nickname, King Temper, that Shannon used for his master ran through their heads all the time. Woof, woof, woof. A puppy ran out and started panting while spinning around their feet. What the hell? Why is a dog in a place like this? The brothers knew that the hidden stage was the personal territory of the crawling chaos, and so it was impossible to find plants and animals that were common in the tower. The yellowish golden dog made them cock their heads in confusion. This close Starapus possessed eyes that could peer into the essence of things, so he stared long and hard at the yellowish golden dog. After a while, he cocked his head again in the other direction. I think this is Fenrir. Fenrir. Second brother, Surely you're not referring to that dog-like bastard from Niflheim, right? Close corner bracket Argus said with a chuckle as he remembered Fenrir, whom he had met in the heavenly world long ago. He vividly remembered how powerful Fenrir had been. Fenrir, the lone wolf demon, along with his siblings Jormungandr, the world serpent that wrapped its body around worlds, and Hel, the mistress of Hell, were the three great demons. How many worlds did Fenrir destroy every time he roared loudly, and how many gods did he tear apart whenever he exposed his ferocious teeth? Even the nickname bestowed on him was Ferocious, God-Eater. Fenrir literally ate anyone he considered an enemy, and he could amplify his magic power after digesting his opponent. Even immortals and transcendents could not escape being consumed. For this reason, whenever Fenrir appeared on the battlefield, many soldiers ran away without looking back. That guy became a yellowish golden furball that wags its tail. Argus dismissed his second brother's words as nonsense. However, Starapus firmly nodded with a frown. Open corner bracket it seems like it. Open corner bracket what a ridiculous joke close corner bracket Argus waved his hand dismissively. Woof, woof. Suddenly, the yellow furball looked at Argus and started barking loudly. Woof. It was as though it were shouting, I'm here. It's truly me. Argus, back straightened as he suddenly sensed danger from an unknown source, and Starapus, who understood the yellow furball's barks, turned blue in the face. Open corner bracket I think it's saying that it'll turn us into eunuchs. Woof. Pitter-patter. Open corner bracket stop him from getting away. The yellow furball quickly scurried away on its short legs as the three Cyclops brothers rushed after it. After Yi and Wu had summoned the three Cyclops brothers, the training and arming of the half-giant warriors proceeded at a rapid pace. Shannon continued his personal training sessions with the half-giants. Shannon did not enjoy this process, and he felt worse as time went on because the half-giants' motivation levels continued to fall, and their insincerity towards his training regimen became more blatant. Fortunately, a little boy named Nohite showed promise, but he had never received proper training before, so he always reached his physical limits. If the half-giants were forced into battle in their current state, they would be nothing but cannon fodder to the otherworld gods. Valdebik would fall into deep thought whenever he observed Yi and Wu's orders being carried out, but he never tried to stop Yi and Wu. The gods and demons' envoys also just did what Yi and Wu told them to do. They put on protection spells on the fortress, gave blessings whenever a new weapon was made, and more. They did not have time to think of anything else. Eventually, the village continued to expand, and eventually, it could even be called a proper fortress. After nearly a month passed, an army armed with splendid weapons was born. The envoys were forced to swallow their swear words as they watched this development. Damn it, to give such precious things to that bunch. They seemed to shed tears of blood as they watched the warriors putting on dazzling armor. Had anyone ever seen a legion armed exclusively with god-grade artifacts like this? Did they not all have the highest blessings and powers bestowed upon them by the highest gods? The new pieces were masterpieces created by the three Cyclops brothers who had pounded throughout the night for an entire month. The three Cyclops brothers were excellent masters who were known far and wide, and the weapons they created were traded at very high prices, even in the heavenly world. The envoys also heard that the materials used to make such items were the main ingredients of adamantine nova, blood tear stones and blood essence. Even if one looked in the various godly and demonic societies until one's eyes popped out, no one would find a single unit armed with things as valuable as this army carried. It was like putting a pearl necklace around a pig's neck, only much worse. Still, the half-giants could not hide their discomfort, as if the armor they were wearing and the weapons they were holding made them feel cramped and uncomfortable. To the gods, demons, and their envoys viewing this scene, it was heartbreaking to see an invaluable number of precious items being put on such trash. At least, if they had these items in their possession, the gods and demons felt that they would be able to gain the upper hand in the upcoming war against Alpharon, and the general strength level of all the societies would increase many times. Furthermore, the godly and demonic societies had openly supported Yi and Wu with whatever they thought he needed in order to gain his favor and alliance, but it did not seem that Yi and Wu was interested in allying with them. Open corner bracket let's go. As Yi and Wu sent his command, the army advanced. Maybe all the training they had gone through had not been in vain since they were marching in an organized manner, but it didn't matter to the envoys. In their eyes, the warriors looked like they were flapping around like awkward penguins. As the envoy members were all breathing out deep sighs of annoyance, Yi and Wu shouted in their ears. Open corner bracket what are you guys doing? Why aren't you also following? They hurried to follow. It seemed that they, too, would be dragged into a war whose outcome was already obvious. Open corner bracket based on investigation. The other world gods are situated in 7 territories. During the march, Yi and Wu listened to Bu share the results of an investigation he'd conducted in the past hour. At Yi and Wu's orders, Bu had completed a detailed investigation by placing undead all over the hidden stage. Thanks to Bu's efforts and the data collected by the undead, Yi and Wu now understood the geographical topography of the hidden stage and discovered that the crawling chaos had territories in 7 areas. The crawling chaos was in the central area, which Bu called the Central Territory, and was using the rest of the areas as a defense. Open corner bracket crawling, chaos, tral, territory, up to, something. It's up to something, open corner bracket yes, a form, of, consciousness, detected. The crawling chaos had not shown any reaction despite Yi and Wu's open declaration of war. Occasionally, lower-ranking otherworld gods approached the fortress, but they were easy to deal with. They tied the otherworld gods up in chains and threw them into the void. After this happened several times, the visits began to peter out. Thanks to that, Yi and Wu managed to buy time to arm and train his army. However, he couldn't help feeling a sense of concern as he could not figure out what the crawling chaos was up to. The crawling chaos was immensely displeased with a mere mortal running around claiming to be the Black King's successor, and the giants had pestered it before. It might have a strong desire to get rid of these troublesome beings. Since it wanted to take over the tower, the crawling chaos was probably seething with frustration. It was clear that the crawling chaos was up to something, but Yi and Wu had no idea what it might be. It's probably just having fun and horsing around, but I can't stake everything on that guess. In any case, Yi and Wu felt it necessary to take the 7 territories, each one controlled by an otherworld god, as soon as possible. Since the idea of the army carrying out this task was laughable, Yi and Wu had already prepared a plan. Valdebik came up to Yi and Wu after being summoned. He said uneasily, open corner bracket, do I really have to do this? It's for the sake of your people. Open corner bracket, I guess it can't be helped. Valdebik said as he sighed heavily. He turned over the bag he was carrying on his shoulders and shook its contents onto the ground. All sorts of rubbish came pouring out. The godly society less than Malik greater than shows curiosity about the items that have been taken out. The godly society less than Diva greater than is paying close attention to the bag. The demonic society less than Jia sect greater than asks what all those things are. The various societies, as well as all the envoys, cocked their heads at the items. Meanwhile, a cacophony of cries came out of the half-giants' mouths. Wait a minute, hey, why is that there? I was wondering where that had gone. I've been searching for it forever. Why the hell is it there? The sight of the items on the ground made the half-giants yell. No one had ever seen them so impassioned before. They wanted to abandon their battle formation and run towards Valdebik, but Bu suddenly appeared from the sky and bound their feet with a large area of effect magic spell. Yi and Wu looked at the half-giants, whose pupils were shaking as though there were mini earthquakes inside them, with an expressionless face. He reached for the items on the ground and picked up a diary. Month 13, Day 11. Today, I confessed to Iba, who lives next door, but she rejected me because she heard from her mother who heard from my mom that I drew a map on my blanket last night. I hate my mom. Oh my, you did that kind of stuff on your blanket at the age of 14. Ouch, I feel sorry for you. Oh, there's something else like this as well. Ahem. Month 15, Day 32. I think I'm the chosen one. I can feel the black darkness running through me. Isn't this a bit serious? The half-giants screamed as their faces turned white. No, stop, they mouthed. However, all their screams were muffled by Bu's silencing magic. Yi and Wu continued to wave around their old diaries in front of everyone and read aloud the various novels they had written during their adolescence and even their teenaged NC-17 thoughts. These were diaries that they had hidden in secret areas around their houses, and each time Yi and Wu waved or read one, the owners turned beet red with embarrassment. Bu, throw all these in the middle of the territory's square. Open corner bracket, your wish is my command. Flutter. After all the objects disappeared through the portal with Bu, Yi and Wu turned his attention to the bewildered half-giants and said with a large smile, what are you all looking at? Shouldn't you hurry and take your things back before others read them? Most gods cover their faces and groan. Most of the demons enjoy your shenanigans and slap their thighs. A few gods look at the descendants of their enemies with pitying eyes for the first time. A small number of demons feel a strong sense of danger from you. Some gods wonder if they should bestow you with divinities related to ill temper and deception. Vimalasitra bitterly laughs. Cernunnos shakes his head. The gods and demons who observed Yi and Wu's actions gave out long sighs. For the first time, the gods felt sympathy for the half-giants while the demons mostly found Yi and Wu's actions curious and funny. What Yi and Wu did was so wicked and underhanded that even the demons would not undertake anything similar. Who would ever consider something so distasteful as exposing someone's weakness publicly? It would shame even those with the most hardened of hearts. Although Valdebik dutifully followed Yi and Wu's order, he could not hide his regret for his actions against his own people. However, in any case, he had agreed to the plan. Valdebik saw Nohite turn his head towards him and smile. Although Valdebik was grateful that at least one person was smiling, he also worried about what would happen to Nohite later on. Nohite was his biggest ally and helper in carrying out this work, and since he was the only child in the village, he had everyone's love. His close relationship with everyone was the reason why he knew so many secrets, including the locations where they hid their diaries. That was why he found and took them without much trouble. Essentially, Nohite had taken advantage of the half-giants' goodwill. Valdebik had no idea that the half-giants would react so quickly. Their hopeless passivity had not wavered in the face of Shannon's intimidation, Yi and Wu's instillment of fighting spirit, or even from fear of death. If it was something that they could easily overcome through embarrassment, no one would have worked so hard to change them in the first place. Yi and Wu and Valdebik aimed to instigate intense emotions in the half-giants, turn them into a frenzy, and convert those frenzied emotions into action. No matter how unmotivated the half-giants were, their emotions could still fluctuate violently. As Yi and Wu had previously instructed them to do so, the bewildered gods and demons who were on standby outside the region began loading buffs, blessings, and even curses upon the half-giants. Less than insanity greater than. Less than confusion greater than. Less than ghost in the tundra greater than. The godly powers and abilities that the gods and demons bestowed upon the half-giants mainly dealt with altering one's psyche, and they all had one thing in common, making one go berserk. Yi and Wu was trying to use the same method that Valdebik had used when climbing the tower in the past. At that time, Valdebik was not much different from these half-giants. He was good-hearted, but he also suffered from passivity. He detested fighting to the point that it was difficult for him to even lift a sword, afraid that he might harm his opponent. However, Valdebik was able to compensate for his weakness by using a berserker skill which greatly increased his aggression while making him go half insane. He used it to compensate for his weakness, and by the time Arthea was famous, he even terrorized the other players in the tower as Sword Yaksha. Yi and Wu now thought that Valdebik's berserker skill had probably aroused a fighting spirit that was already hidden inside him. The traits that had been passed down from Valdebik's ancestors, the giants, had not entirely disappeared into the ether. Thus, Yi and Wu thought that this was probably the case with these half-giants as well. However, unlike Valdebik, who possessed the abilities and skill to bring out berserker, the half-giants had to be externally given this quality. The highest gods and demons' buffs, blessings, and curses would hopefully give the half-giants the opportunity to do so. In the end, their already heightened emotions fluctuated even more wildly according to the influences of the gods and demons' spells, paralyzing their thoughts. Less than wicked devil greater than. The power that Agaris had bestowed on them made the half-giants raise their heads up, their aggression amplified. Agar's buff, which was filled with his divine powers, concentrated madness and destruction. It was such an effective buff that Yi and Wu had used it often himself until he read the revelations. Boom, boom, boom. For the first time, the eyes of the half-giants, which had always been clouded over with a sense of helplessness and apathy, gained strength and grew bloodshot from the blood that rushed throughout their bodies. Their blood vessels started bulging along their taut skin as if they were about to burst out at any moment. Grr, some of the half-giants even started drooling like wild beasts that were mad with hunger. For the first time, Yi and Wu's property of fight, which had been instilled in them when they entered a contract with Yi and Wu, started to rear its head. As fight started to take hold, the half-giant's consciousness was dampened, leaving only bestial instincts that thirsted to fight. The scorching aura of heat emitted by the half-giants spread in all directions. After seeing their transformed attitude, Valdebik shouted out, "Open corner bracket, let's go my brethren." Valdebik raised his sword high into the air. His eyes were also showing signs of madness as it had been a while since he last activated Berserker. In response, the half-giants roared all together. Roar, growl. The half-giants who had already lost their reason bounded forward. Boo, open it. At Yanwu's command, a large portal opened in front of the half-giants. Beyond it lay an area similar to the one Yanwu had seen when he first arrived at this hidden stage, a forest of giant corpses of varying sizes. The auras of different otherworld gods swarmed all over the place. It was a terrifying sight. Usually, the half-giants wouldn't even consider entering this territory, much less raise their heads to challenge the inhabitants. However, aside from losing their reason and sanity, they were completely overwhelmed by Yanwu's fighting spirit. The maddening desire to crush anything in their path made them unaware of their location or destination. Anywhere was fine as long as they could fight. Just then, there was a big commotion inside the forest, and a strange creature that looked like a large salamander jumped out. It was an otherworldly god with much less divine power than the crawling chaos, but it still exuded enough to easily overcome most transcendent beings. The feelings of the gods and demons who followed the half-giants across the portal hardened. The power of disorder and chaos that the large salamander exuded was so antithetical to their nature that just looking at it disgusted them. Not caring about any of that, the large salamander showed an incredible agility as it leapt over the entire forest in one bound and rushed towards the half-giants, its huge shadow looming over their heads. The eyes of the half-giants turned to the salamander, and with twisted faces, they were about to confront it when Valdebik jumped in front of them. Bam! Valdebik's greatsword Valdebik slashed into the otherworld god. The difference in their power pushed Valdebik straight back, but his stance did not break. Using his strong legs like pillars, Valdebik pushed the salamander to a standstill with the trembling greatsword, which didn't chip or crack. I can do this. Valdebik widened his red eyes. It was the first time he had been able to stand up like this after clashing directly with an otherworld god. After coming down to the hidden stage, he had tirelessly trained to protect his kin against the otherworld gods, so he had developed enough power to contend with them to a certain extent. However, it was only enough to protect his own life in the end. The otherworld gods could probably capture and kill him if they really wanted, but they would probably find it too annoying to do so. To the otherworld gods, his existence was too insignificant. However, things had changed, and he now had the confidence that he could defeat an otherworld god. Perhaps, it shouldn't have come as a surprise. The three Cyclops brothers had armed everyone with weapons made of blood tear stones and blood essence, and many gods and demons had enhanced these weapons with their powers. This was more than enough to strengthen them many times over, but more than anything. Open corner bracket trust me. He now had a purpose to strive for. Open corner bracket pray faithfully. He would be under the protection of a god. Open corner bracket then, I shall save you. He would not allow himself to lose ever again. Open corner bracket you will become my second child. You'll open up a path and realize my goals. Valdebik was accepting this battle with the otherworld gods as a holy war. Beyond saving his race, he would show the world the greatness of his god. That was what Valdebik faithfully believed he had to do as a second child. Second, Valdebik had already been officially appointed as Yanwu's second apostle and the great warrior who would lead the half-giant race. Even though he had to share the power he received from his god with Doyle, the first child, it was enough to awaken his latent transcendent powers. Valdebik started moving forward. Bam! Raising his magic power, he sharply deflected his opponent's blow and brought his greatsword down. Valdebik's greatsword sliced the otherworld god's forehead open, and the otherworld god's blood splattered into the air. Seeing his opponent in such a state, Valdebik put more strength in his legs, slamming his feet into the ground as he sprinted forward. It was said that the god he worshipped walked two paths, one is the path of fight. The other is the path of death. Fight was a path taken to prove oneself while death was a path to guide the enemies to their demise. Walking both paths at the same time was the proper way to follow his god's will. Valdebik was going to prove himself by defeating the otherworld gods, whom he'd once thought he could not overcome, through fight, and at the same time, he would lead the immortals to their death and show the will of his god to all. Crack! His intense prayers and aspirations would become faith, and that faith would provide him with even greater strength. The black and red flames that erupted from the greatsword flashed like lightning and severed the otherworld god's right foot. Crack! Gush! Valdebik had used sword energy. Although it couldn't compare to Yanwu's sword energy, it was close enough to wave of fire. Just being able to use it was proof that Valdebik had already become a faithful servant of Yanwu. Valdebik's heart was already filled with a sincere faith in Yanwu. Thanks to this, as the battle went on, his sword energy grew more powerful and destructive. This useless, insignificant being. For the first time, a look of bewilderment appeared in the otherworld god's eyes. It never thought that it could be harmed by an insignificant insect that was so easily trampled. Not only that, the salamander was being forced to push its power to its limits to heal itself. However, its recuperation stalled as death infected its wounds and spread throughout its body, eating away at its existence. For the first time in its life, the otherworld god felt a sense of crisis, the very feeling he thought only mortals could feel. Whack, bam, bam, Valdebik had no intention of giving him any room to breathe, swinging his sword relentlessly and pushing the otherworld god around. Each time the dark red flames flashed, deep wounds appeared on the salamander's flesh, and the forest was engulfed in flames. The thought that he could win, the feeling of gaining the upper hand, and his strong faith in Yi and Wu combined together to raise Valdebik's confidence. He wanted to destroy his opponent once and for all. The more faith he had as he swung his sword, the more his confidence grew, and the more the legends of fight and death shone. Furthermore, Valdebik's fighting spirit was naturally transmitted to the other believers, the half-giants, through their connection of faith. Open corner bracket it is losing. Open corner bracket we can win. Open corner bracket we can win. Open corner bracket advance forward, brethren. Open corner bracket let's fight. Open corner bracket death to our enemies. The half-giants burst into shouts and rushed the otherworld god. The weapons they possessed resonated in unison and activated the magic inside. Soon, dark red flames, which symbolized Yi and Wu and his power, blossomed on their weapons. As the effects flashed, the otherworld god was almost entirely consumed in red flames. The half-giants piled onto the salamander, the combat techniques that Shannon had taught them or any tactical strategy completely disappearing. They simply ran with crazed fervor, waving their weapons haphazardly. However, that was already enough. It was a sign that the traits they inherited from their ancestors, the giants, were beginning to bloom. The abnormal status has passed a manageable limit. Warning: excitement has exceeded acceptable risk limitations. If the current status continues, there may be more negative consequences afterward. Warning: madness has exceeded acceptable risk limitations. If the current status continues, a strong penalty may be incurred. You have been given another warning. The number of status abnormalities has exceeded the restriction levels. The hidden condition has been broken. A part of the latent traits will be released. The giant trait, collective will, has awakened. The giant trait, tactical group fighting, has been awakened. The giant trait, indomitable spirit, has been awakened. The ancestral characteristics are awakening. They are becoming more aware of their ancestors' powers. The legend for the god they worship is being created. The half-giants were still unaware of the fact that they were natural fighters even though they instinctively fought and moved as a group. Shannon's combat training was meant to bring these qualities out, but the moment they were awakened, the half-giants didn't need the training after all. All they had to do was wield their weapons and fight instinctively. After that, victory would follow. These useless, insignificant beings. The otherworld god uttered its last words as it died, still filled with exasperation and disbelief that it was being killed by such insignificant beings. Open corner bracket ha, did you think we'd leave you alone forever? Valdebik snorted and raised his greatsword, whose reddish-black flames burned more splendidly than ever before. Open corner bracket there will be no more defeat for our people. He lodged his greatsword firmly under the otherworld god's chin. Open corner bracket for the sake of the god we serve, we will always win. Smash! Valdebik twisted his greatsword horizontally and beheaded the otherworld god. Blood and flesh scattered in all directions as if a bomb had exploded. The other half-giants jumped into the fray to stab and burn the rest of its body. Boom, boom, boom. There was a chain of explosions, and trails of flame spread in all directions. In the middle of all this commotion, the half-giants, including Valdebik, roared loudly to the sky. These were the shouts of those drunk on victory. The half-giant warriors have successfully acquired the great achievement of God's death. The achievements of the half-giants have been recorded in the tower's system and shall be widely shared throughout the tower. Some giant factors have been taken away. Awakening has been strengthened. Your legend has grown. Your legend has grown. Your keyword, fight, has been strengthened. The half-giant warrior corps have made a great achievement called resurrection. The achievements of the warrior corps will be delivered directly to their god, ###. S reputation is spreading. The warrior corps' achievements were recorded in the system, and they were given a new blessing. The system drove player growth according to recorded achievements, so players tried to reach higher levels by following their given paths, which created a self-reinforcing cycle. Great achievements such as God's Death were bound to have a strong influence on the half-giants, even though they had achieved the result with the help of hundreds of powerful buffs, outstanding equipment, and a dampened consciousness. Regardless, the tower recognized their achievements and applied the appropriate rewards to the half-giants, whose abilities began to drastically adjust to match their achievements. Their previously empty status windows were now filling up with new titles and characteristics. It was a sign that the traits of their long-forgotten ancestors were gradually awakening within them. The godly society less than Dilmun greater than is silent. The godly society less than Diva greater than is silent. The godly societies of less than Asgard greater than and less than Olympus greater than express their strong concerns. The godly society less than Malik greater than is staring at the half-giant warriors who have begun resurrection. The demonic society, less than L'infernal greater than, expresses its satisfaction with the creation of a strong ally. The demonic society, less than Gia sect greater than, shows great admiration for you and your followers, progress. Most gods are vehemently complaining about the half-giant warrior corpse achievement skill, resurrection. A few gods feel a strong concern about your keyword, fight, because of its compatibility with the half-giant warrior core. They are concerned that the pairing is too good. Vimalasitra looks at you and the warrior core with eyes filled with happiness. Cernunos shows a strong interest in your warrior core. The gods and demons displayed different reactions one after another. As always, the gods seemed to be shocked when the situation they were concerned about eventually occurred, and on the contrary, the demons were enjoying the disruptive situation very much. Regardless of concern or enjoyment, it was true that many showed increased interest in the half-giants who were starting their resurrection process. A handful of demons are drooling over your half-giant warrior core. They are showing a strong desire to discover more about the forgotten giant race through observing this process. The demons had a habit of enjoying something they wanted by corrupting it. This was why the dragon race had been born and the reason Agaras had a crazy obsession with Yianwu and Zhengwu. However, Yianwu raised his head and stared at the eyes looking down at him. The few demons who meet your eyes have stumbled backward in surprise. A handful of demons who have met your eyes turn their heads away. Demons always sought a chance to backstab others, but they rarely tried their underhanded deeds against someone stronger since they were instinctively subservient to the strong. Those who evaded eye contact were much less powerful than Yianwu, and they had no choice but to turn their heads. Open corner bracket. I am warning all of you, close corner bracket, Yianwu declared. Open corner bracket. If you show those greedy eyes one more time, I'll rip them out one day. Whether that's possible or not, time will tell. There was no answer, but Yianwu thought that the silence was an acceptable response. A few demons have fallen cautiously silent. Rustle. At that moment, the forest rustled, and more otherworld gods appeared. They were strange-looking monsters that ranged from dozens of meters to hundreds of meters tall. Gods. Death. Given. To. Mere. Flesh. And. Blood. Kill. Them. All. They expressed hostility and surprise that a lower-ranking member of theirs had been killed. SS's. The hidden stage fluctuated greatly once they released their divine powers. The sky seemed to shatter and the ground turned over, scorching magma rising to the surface. However, the half-giants showed no signs of concern or nervousness. Open corner bracket. They're just like the other one. Open corner bracket. I will fight. Open corner bracket. I will fight. Still intoxicated by the victory that they had just tasted, the half-giants looked at the otherworld gods with eyes full of madness. Then, with large smiles that showed off their incisors, they rushed forward. The otherworld gods were in an embarrassingly awkward position. They never thought the creatures they had treated like toys would charge them like this. However, their bewilderment quickly turned into anger. They were going to remind the half-giants which of them was superior. Roar. Another battle ensued. Your legend, written by the half-giant warriors, is shining brightly. Yianwu sensed a rush of energy filling his chest and savored the moment. Then, with a firm expression, Yianwu spoke to the gods and demons who were watching the battlefield absent-mindedly. What are you all doing? There was no response. Shouldn't you guys start running? The faces of the envoys who understood the meaning of Yianwu's words hardened. Though it was true that the half-giant warrior corps had helped defeat an otherworld god, Valdebek had done most of the work. The warrior corps had just swooped in at the end, and it was impossible to expect them to handle so many otherworld gods at once. Yi and Wu was implying that they ought to help the warrior corps finish off the otherworld gods. Unfortunately for the envoys, this meant that they wouldn't be able to turn back. Since they'd helped create the warrior corps in the first place, there was no way that the otherworld gods would leave their societies alone now. And so, in the end, Phuic, damn it, just you wait. The envoys rushed into battle while cursing Yi and Wu internally. Boom, 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 a colorful explosion spread all over the battlefield. Open corner bracket ha ha ha, I never thought that you'd be doing things that are usually done in the demonic world. The more I look at you, the more I want you. One day, I will take over your soul. Agaris burst out in laughter as he looked at the battlefield and then at Yi and Wu. Even though Yi and Wu had become stronger, he did not hide his obvious obsession with him. Actually, he seemed to be getting more obsessive. Open corner bracket hurry and bring Jung Wu out of the Black King's darkness or whatever you call it. That way, I can have both of your souls. Yi and Wu snorted as if he did not consider Agair's words worth responding to. Stop talking nonsense and jump in. Open corner bracket kikiki, you're playing hard to get. It was not particularly scary when a 5-year-old kid was spewing out words and laughter like that. Woof, woof. Next to Agaris, Fenrir wagged its tail wildly and barked as if it wanted to remind everyone of his presence. Open corner bracket all right, then shall we see what this body can do. Agaris stepped forward and shouted up at the sky. Open corner bracket come, my army. As soon as Agaris said those words, the sky ripped open, and hundreds of meteors swept through the sky and crashed to the ground. It was the sortie of the Eastern Demon King, Agair's subordinate. Fenrir, who had transformed into a giant wolf, was pawing the ground with his vicious teeth exposed. You have successfully reclaimed territory from the crawling chaos. Scenario quest Proof of Gods and Kings 4 has been partially updated. Open the quest window to check the updated contents. Scenario quest Proof of Gods and Kings 4. Description: after your declaration to become the god and king of the forgotten race that lost its ancestral pride and fighting spirit, you led them out of ruin and completed your exploration of all the territories. You have inspired a sense of pride and achievement among the forgotten race's people. Meanwhile, the crawling chaos, who has a hostile relationship with you, has noticed your existence and ordered the otherworld gods to intervene. From now on, all the otherworld gods on this hidden stage will move against you and your followers. You have a responsibility to protect your believers from danger. You also have a duty to bring them security and prosperity. Thus, protect your followers from those who are trying to get in their way. Furthermore, build a holy territory for your believers, where they can settle and live in the future. To do this, you will have to drive out the crawling chaos and the otherworld gods, take their territories, gain independence, and develop your holy lands and structures. Although it will be a difficult achievement that even the great giant ancestors of the past could not achieve, if you are successful, you will create a great legend that no one can match. Time limit. Conditions. Complete. Proof of the King III. The holder of the title, Great Warrior. The leader of the half-giant. Rewards. 1. Faith of the people and believers plus. Varying reward levels according to the level of contribution. 2. Token of the Fourth King. 3. Helm of the Skeleton King. 4. Continuation in the chain quest, Proof of God and King V. **** You have successfully completed part of the scenario quest conditions Proof of Gods and Kings 4. Destroy more enemy territories, establish your holy lands, and build a temple at the center of your territories to honor and glorify your existence. Number of territories currently occupied, 1/7. Number of holy territories established and completed, 0/1. Yi and Wu checked the contents of the updated quest window and smiled lightly. Everything seemed to be working as planned. Open corner bracket what the hell happened? Open corner bracket my body hurts like crazy. Open corner bracket all this destruction, did we do all this? Open corner bracket no way. After closing the quest window, Yi and Wu looked around at the half-giants who were sitting on the ground. They were dazed and exhausted, and it seemed to them that their previous actions had just been a dream. They had never considered the otherworld gods' territories as places they could access. They were sure they would die just approaching it. However, when they looked around, they could see that the entire territory had been devastated. The traces of the underworld gods as well as the frightening forest had all been burned down. The vague memories they had told them that this was all their doing. The tingling sensation in their fingertips also felt as though they were still holding weapons. Other than pickaxes, they had never held sharpened blades before. This was the first time. However, They didn't dislike the feeling, and in fact, they felt refreshed and light, as if a decades-old blockage had loosened up, or a dense fog had been lifted. Their heightened emotions made the world look completely new, and their all-consuming apathy was now gone, replaced by a sense of confidence. Hope began to rise in their hearts as the feeling that they could achieve things they'd only ever dreamed of grew. Thank you, descendants. Spirits suddenly appeared and bowed to the half-giants. The half-giants instinctively knew who they were. They were the beings that the half-giants had always regarded as fictional characters in old stories and tales passed down through the generations. They had thought that these ancestors had only been created by adults to comfort them while they were suppressed in a narrow cage. However, through Yianwu and Valdebik, the half-giants realized that their ancestors really once existed. Although countless generations had passed, these spirits were still their ancestors. Now that the ancestors were closer, they held the hands of their descendants. Thanks to you, we are finally able to rest. However, we still have one regret. We hope you can bring closure and rest to our brethren in the other territories. Russell, even in death, the spirit souls could not rest in peace since they were still under the restriction of the crawling chaos. They left this last wish as they dispersed into the air. When they were trapped in the forest, their faces were filled with anguish or disfigured from screams. However, in the end, they were finally able to smile. The legacy of the giants is being passed on to the heirs according to proper procedure. The achievements left by the ancestors from time immemorial have been passed on to their descendants. Legend has been strengthened. Legend has been strengthened. Awakening has opened new possibilities for the half-giants. Particles of light remained in the places where the ancestral giants' souls had stood and soon scattered into the half-giants. Their eyes gleamed with light, and their bodies, which were exhausted from the fierce battle, were re-energized. Crack, crack, the sounds of their bodies twisting and cracking accompanied their sudden growth spurt until the tallest among them was 3 meters tall. Their bones and muscles grew stronger and denser, and an aggressiveness began to emanate from them. The half-giants had the genes of the original giants, but ever since they lost their transcendence, they had collapsed as a race. However, as they accumulated the achievements, the potential that had been lying dormant over the generations exploded out, causing the sudden transformation. Perhaps the more territories they continued to retake, the more souls they freed, and the more intense the struggles they faced, the faster they would be able to regain their true giant race appearance. It seems like they're useful now. Yianwu burst into laughter as he looked at his devoted believers. He held the fruit of good and evil in one hand, and the sharp eyes of the warriors focused on it. As if they had agreed beforehand, they all rose and prostrated themselves in front of Yianwu. It was the highest level of courtesy and respect they could show to their god and king. The warriors shouted in unison. We welcome our great god. We welcome our great god. A magnificent, powerful wave of aura flowed out. Looking at this scene, Shannon muttered as if frustrated, he managed to awaken the half-giants by making them throw a tantrum. He truly is King Temper.